Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best Entitled People stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. I finally kicked my Karen daughter out of the house. My daughter recently told me and my wife that she's pregnant, and apparently she's been hiding it for 3 months. The boyfriend is a scumbag who I thought she left after I gave her an ultimatum to either leave him or leave my house, to which she chose the latter, or at least I thought she did. She started sobbing and telling us how sorry she was and that it was just a big mistake. I told her the only way she can stay in our house is if she gave the baby up for adoption, because we won't allow it to ruin her life. She just kept pleading to us that she'll take care of it, but I had a very hard time believing her after I just found out she's been lying to me for months and going behind my back to see her boyfriend. My daughter refused to give her baby up, to which I decided to kick her out of my house, and now she's staying with a friend for I don't know how long. My wife has been incredibly sad and is now telling me what I did was wrong. It wasn't an easy decision for me to make, but I couldn't allow her to walk away without any consequences. At her age, I was already taking care of myself, so I don't look at it the same way others might. Is it really wrong for me to kick my adult daughter out of my house after she lied to me? I'm willing to see if I've taken things too far. You're the jerk. You know forbidding your daughter from seeing her boyfriend is just going to make him more desirable, right? And how is kicking her out when she's pregnant, vulnerable, and in need of stability and love going to help? Yeah, not great parenting, I would say. Edit. Getting a few responses saying, OP set his rules and his daughter made her bed. Now she has to live with the consequences. Setting rules is one thing. Kicking out your daughter when she is most desperate is going to be the jerk choice 99.9% of the time. OP is choosing his rules over supporting his daughter. Not the jerk. If she expects for you to shoulder the expense and take on childcare duties you didn't agree to, you've put her in a very difficult position, and I can see why a lot of people think you are the jerk, but I would have done the same. Although, I would have had a serious conversation first about what I am willing and unwilling to do. Set very firm rules and boundaries as to my involvement and financial help, which she has to accept if she wants to return. If she chooses to keep the baby and I'm financially able, I would help in initially setting her up outside of my home, as I have no interest in raising another baby in my 40s. But I'm not going to financially support her forever. That being said, I would not leave her with completely no options, no support, and no help. If you let her come back with her choosing to keep the baby, know that there will be responsibilities expected from you that will fall on you and your wife, considering she's only 19. Is she working? How will she support herself? Is she going to pursue getting child support from the father? Either way, it's a difficult decision to make. Best of luck to you and your daughter. Not the jerk. If you let her stay, you and your wife will be the ones raising that baby while she runs around getting into more trouble and having more kids. She'll know that she can count on mom and dad to keep providing while she keeps doing her thing. I'm disgusted by all the people here telling you you're in the wrong. The good thing is they will be in the same position in about 30 years. Then they will get to be the 41-year-old grandparents raising babies. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for kicking his daughter out or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for insisting my kids know their gifts are from me, not Santa? So I'm a mother of a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. This year, I want to only give a couple of cheap gifts as from Santa for each kid. The rest of their gifts will be clearly marked as from me, my husband, and other family and friends. My thought behind this is that it's not fair on kids whose families can't get them big presents to hear of other kids getting big things from Santa. This has caused an argument between my husband and me, and other members of the family are taking his side, stating I'm ruining the magic for my kids, and that they don't mind the kids not knowing what gifts are from them. I'm not against them believing in Santa and having that childhood wonder, but I don't agree with it being more than a few small gifts. But I also don't want to ruin their fun in Christmas. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. There's a movement of people trying to do this. I see it all over social media. Santa gifts should be a couple of small fun toys and a book, something any kid might receive. Otherwise, kids like me grow up wondering why Santa would bring the rich kids a motorized Jeep mini car, a bike, and a telescope, and would only bring me an off-brand Barbie and some rocks. Santa can still be magic, even if the kids know where most of the gifts come from. Edit. You can tell everyone who voted the other way never went to school after Christmas and had to hear about all the expensive stuff Santa brought other kids. Their privilege is showing. You are very definitely not the jerk. Not the jerk. I have a lot of feelings about the whole Santa thing, and your point is one of them. Santa originally was to bring one toy to kids and morphed into parents buying everything their kid wants from Santa. Not to mention, kids growing up in less savory home situations can seriously freak out over the idea of some fat guy breaking into their home. I think you can do the magic of Santa and the fun Santa Day without making it all about what Santa can bring you. One gift, or a few cheaper gifts, or a stuffed animal or something is perfectly acceptable. Also, they're 6 and 4 and getting gifts. They're not going to give two hoots who the gift comes from as long as they get fun presents. You're the jerk. You are basing your family's decisions on some imaginary kids at school who might get upset because Santa didn't get them what he got your kid. What could you possibly get a 4 and 6-year-old that would make their peers think that? Also, so the kids will be upset that Santa got your kids cool stuff, but if your kid just says the gifts come from you, the imaginary poor kid will not feel bad? Feel free to celebrate the holiday however you see fit. But if you want your kids to give you all the credit for your amazing gifts, then just say that and give it a rest with the concern about the imaginary kid who was in tears because your 4-year-old got a doll from Santa. Well, what do you think? Is Opie the jerk or not? Please let us know. People really love to overthink things nowadays, don't they? We won't talk to anyone except for the name on the account. This took place about 15 years ago and involved a large corporate banking entity. I forgot the name of it, but for the sake of the story, let's call it Fells Wargo. There are some important parts that come into play. 1. My spouse and I were young and dumb financially. We both had bounced a few checks on our own checking accounts. They were closed a few years prior. 2. Fells Wargo offered a way to rehab your checking account's history. They offered you the opportunity to pay them an additional $10 a month to have the right to have a checking account. They restricted the release of funds and made life difficult to even having a checking account, but if you played by their rules, you could graduate to a traditional checking account after a year. 3. I participated in the opportunity checking and graduated my account. My spouse had lived without a checking account for a few years and wanted to try again. 4. I took my spouse to Fells Wargo. We specifically explained their previous history and specifically asked for the crappy checking rebuilding account. We knew my spouse needed to start at the bottom. 5. The manager of the branch enters the basic information and declared there was no need for the rehab checking account. They qualified for the regular account. We asked again to be absolutely sure. Yes, no rehab needed. Here's some starter checks. Your ATM card will be in the mail in a week. Gladly took an initial cash deposit of $500. Fast forward a week. We get the ATM card. Call to activate it. Your account has been closed. Why? We determined you have bad checking history previously. We go round and round about how we covered this, disclosed it up front, and asked for the checking rehab account. You will have to go back and open that account if you want. We can't change the account. So they're closing the account because we needed to have the rehab checking account, the one we specifically asked for, and they refused. My spouse didn't know what to say, so we got on speakerphone. I started asking questions. So, will you pay the outstanding checks and refund the rest? No, we won't pay any checks. You'll be charged for return checks from your merchants. My spouse wrote 3 checks totaling less than $100. Very few places accepted starter checks. They have the funds in the closed account to pay them. Where's the issue? We don't do that. At this point, they became flustered. Nobody seems to ever have the funds or the audacity to demand them to pay checks written in good faith. They had no answers on how they refused the checking account we requested and would have been okay to have. They didn't think they had a responsibility to notify us the account was closed. And how dare we challenge their policy? They didn't like how I kept pointing out how there wasn't a single thing we did wrong, but they think they are not responsible for return check fees. So they decided to not talk to me any longer. They hung up. We call back, repeat. Finally, they offer this gem. We won't talk to anyone except the name on the account. Click. Their only possible choice to avoid a difficult discussion where they own their mistakes was clinging to not letting someone else ask questions with the account holder's permission. They even refused to let me tell my spouse what to ask and respond to my spouse directly. Can only talk to the name on the account? Okay. So I called back. Miraculously, in 60 seconds, I now identified as a different person. Thanks for calling Fells Wargo. May I have your name? Spouse's name. Long pause. You aren't your spouse? Me. Sure I am. Ask me anything. Name, social security, address, mother's maiden name, date of birth. Verified it all as the name on the account. Long pause. No, you aren't them. Why do you say that? Because you're a man. Wait a minute. That's why you closed my account? Because I'm a man? I'm pretty sure that's against ECOA, maybe Reg B. Please hold. A manager finally comes on. We have a little back and forth about who I identify as, but seeing how I'm not doing anything except demanding they pay checks on my spouse's account, written by my spouse, with funds in their possession, there isn't much they can fight. But they finally agree to pay the 3 checks from the funds in the account. They didn't want to, even in the end, but the name on the account demanded it. Fallout? They had to do the right thing after wasting hours fighting it. Reply. I had an issue with Webster Bank a long time ago. I checked my bank account and I was something like negative $200. I added up the overdraft fees and they were roughly $350. So I call and ask how I can be negative less than the total of the overdraft fees. They gave me some BS explanation on how they were legit overdraft fees, and I asked if they could provide physical documentation that those are legitimate charges. They said no. I said, "You'll be hearing from me," and hung up. I checked my account about a half hour later, and the fees were gone, and my account was positive $150. Am I the jerk? I upset my pregnant wife and caused her to cry. My wife is 2 months pregnant. Yesterday was my birthday. When I went into the kitchen, my wife told me that she was going to work and wouldn't be home until late. She didn't even acknowledge my birthday. I asked her if she had made any breakfast. She usually cooks breakfast for me on my birthday, but she told me to manage with cereal. I thought maybe she wants to surprise me or something and just kept quiet. My parents, siblings, and friends called me after that to wish me a happy birthday. I cooked lunch for the both of us and drove to my wife's office to spend time with her. I sat in the park opposite to her office, waiting for her to come out for lunch. I think one of her colleagues saw me waiting for her and informed her because she came down soon after and told me to go back home and not embarrass her in front of her colleagues. I handed her the lunch and asked her to at least have it instead of the cafeteria food. She took it and threw it into the trash. I was hurt and embarrassed, so I immediately left for home. I was really upset by then and no longer wanted to spend time with her. I went to a movie, ate at my favorite diner, then went to the beach for the rest of the evening. When I went home, my wife surprised me with a cake and party. My in-laws and parents were there. I ignored my wife and went back into the room. My mom got mad at me because apparently my wife was crying. I then proceeded to narrate everything that happened that day to everyone present. My mom was the only one to side with my wife because she's pregnant. My wife defended herself by saying that her colleagues were teasing her and calling me names. Now my mom is saying I'm being a baby and that my wife is pregnant and I shouldn't be making her cry. My in-laws and my dad are supporting me. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Having a surprise party has nothing to do with throwing the lunch in the garbage. OP stated that wife agreed and knew he would be there. She backtracked when her coworkers made fun of her. These are 2 separate issues. She made you think she did nothing for your birthday so she could surprise you later. People think that makes the surprise bigger. It doesn't. It just sucks. She's the jerk for the way she handled lunch. She is the jerk for not addressing the situation with you later, apologizing for it, and having a normal conversation about it. Also, being pregnant doesn't mean you get to be a jerk and then cry when someone calls you out on it. It's not a get out of jail card for crappy behavior. Am I the jerk for dropping out of the maid of honor role last minute because of an emergency? My best friend Chloe was getting married last Saturday and I was the maid of honor. For 1 year straight, I was the main planner for her and did the best that I could to fit the standards she had set for the wedding. I even planned an amazing bachelorette party 1 month before the wedding, and I couldn't do this without the gorgeous bridesmaids as well. 2 days before the wedding, my husband had a heart attack and was hospitalized. Doctors said his situation was severe and he was transferred to an ICU. Later, doctors told me he needs an emergency open heart surgery in the next 24 hours. His situation was very life-threatening and we could lose him any time. My best friend called me to wish me well and I thanked her. She also asked me if the surgery will happen before the wedding and I said that it will happen the day before, but it will last for many hours. She said, "That's all right, just making sure it doesn't intervene with the wedding, that's all. It's sad we can't have Ben there," my husband, but we'll have you, and you can eat and drink for both of you." That's when I told her I won't be able to come to the wedding, whether my husband's surgery is over or not, because I need to care for him, and I want to be next to him until we are all 100% sure he's going to be fine. She said she understands, but she reminded me that as a maid of honor, I have a duty, and it's one day before the wedding. I can't drop out. I said that I'm sorry about this, but I almost lost my husband, and I don't want to leave his side yet. She didn't curse me out or anything, but she was very upset and she started crying. She said she understands and wished well again. My husband's surgery went well, and we were now awaiting for his recovery. It was the day of the wedding, and I called my best friend to wish her well. She didn't pick up. Later, I video called one of the bridesmaids and she answered. I asked to talk to Chloe, but she said she's busy getting ready. I said fine, I'll call later. I called again and again, but no response. I thought she was simply busy with the preparations. I called the day after the wedding and still no response. She wouldn't reply to my texts at all. I contacted some of the bridesmaids, and they told me that she's very upset with me for dropping out the day before the wedding and that I should make it work no matter what. Some of them said I did what's reasonable and how my husband's health should be my priority, but some others feel like I let down the bride on her big day and I shouldn't expect a word from her anytime soon. Am I the jerk? Edit. I want to clarify that this is the first time my friend has ever acted like this. We faced many difficulties during wedding planning, but she was always a sweetheart about it and made sure to never give a hard time to anyone. She was actually the most chill bride I've met in my life. There was no way I thought she'd react like this over such an important emergency because I didn't even have a previous sign that she'd act like this. Edit 2. I want to add another disclaimer. On the day of the wedding, I stopped calling because I figured she had not replied because she's busy. But later, I was also told she was only not replying to me specifically because she was upset. She had taken a few calls from relatives who couldn't attend because of distance. She specifically didn't respond to me. One of the bridesmaids also pointed out how it's weird that she never called me to ask how my husband's surgery went, and as a best friend, she could take a couple of minutes out of her day to simply see if everything's okay as well. Never thought about this until my friend, the bridesmaid, mentioned it. So now it hurts way more. Not the jerk, and my heart breaks for you to even have to ask this. You did everything perfectly, dear. If it was her in the hospital, would she prefer her now husband to go to a party or stay and sit with her? Or if it was her husband having open heart surgery, would she have the guts to go out and party knowing what he was going through? I'm so glad your husband's surgery went well, and I hope for a speedy recovery. Walmart Karen tries to steal my new scooter. I've encountered a Karen as a kid once and one who was harassing someone else, but until today, never had one of my own as an adult. So after fighting with disability for 15 years, I finally got my mobility scooter. It's been a godsend and the freedom is a wonder. But as I'm sure we've all learned from Reddit, these things are a Karen magnet. And I've learned it firsthand today, and on only my 5th time out on it. So first, quick background. I live in Surrey, British Columbia, and my local Walmart has presently precisely 0 courtesy scooters for customers. They had 4, but all were either stolen or broken. So I'm at Walmart today, just looking for a snack, when suddenly I'm on the floor. It took me a moment to realize what had happened as I saw a woman, I'm guessing in her late 40s, taking my bags off my scooter. "What the heck are you doing?" I shouted. She sneers at me and replies that she's taking the store's scooter because lazy losers like me don't need it. She was of course perfectly able-bodied. Luckily, I've read enough Karen stories by now to know that if she was stupid enough to mistake a brand new mobility scooter with my name on it for one of those cheap gray scooters with the huge shopping baskets on it, there was no point in even trying to reason with her. So I just shouted, "Security!" at the top of my lungs as she went wide-eyed and tried to get on it and drive away. Luckily, some staff were nearby, plus this Walmart had put up railing so that the only way to exit the store was to pass through the registers. So she had no real way to escape the store. The staff that were helping me up called security, and of course they caught her. She kept insisting it was the store scooter, that I didn't need it, yada yada. I pointed out where my name and number were engraved on it, but she stuck to her guns. Police were called, and after reviewing security footage, it was clear she had flat out assaulted me to get me off of the scooter, and that I was on camera entering the store from the mall entrance. She was of course arrested, and I got the customary gift card they always give victims of Karens and a quick story to tell. Luckily, I think the worst I got from the fall was a bruised hip and a wrist sprain. Not the craziest story this sub has heard, but still thought I'd share it while it was fresh in my mind. Reply: never try to reason with a Karen. Reasoning requires logical thinking, and Karens are incapable of it. Good job, OP. You survived an encounter that could have turned deadly. Your quick thinking just may have saved your life. The little old couple from heck. My hotel has had a lot of crazy happenings that I've shared before, but holy cow, this has to win an award for one of the most insane things to happen. First off, I want to say take a seat, grab a drink, a snack, maybe a beer, because holy cow, this is a long one. This little old couple, very well-mannered and seemingly just cheeky, came to check in mid-evening. The wife we'll call Karen and the man we'll call Ken. They were celebrating Karen's diagnosis as melanoma-free and decided to take a vacation to our property using Karen's membership points. They made a joke that I would get to know them by the end of their stay. Not wrong there. And immediately asked where the bar was so they could get a few glasses of wine. They went out for dinner after scoping out the bar for about 10 minutes and come back a good 2 to 3 hours later. They ordered 2 glasses of Chardonnay, 1 glass per person, then sat down in the lobby, spending about 15 minutes on those glasses just chatting. I had a few check-ins and was standing at my front desk station around the corner from the bar when Karen started shouting, "Waiter!" requesting another glass. Obviously, I'm not a waiter, and it's annoying when people act like we're a full service or I'm a dog, but nonetheless, I went and got them a second round. I'd say another 10 minutes passed before they asked for a second round. They started joking around about their marriage and being cheeky old people. I didn't think much of it. Going back to my pod and going back about 15 minutes later with their third round. They started getting really inappropriate around that time, so I told my coworker I was going to cut them off. On their fourth and final round, Ken blatantly states, "We're thinking of getting it on tonight," and then proceeds to go on a big spout of nonsense which gets Karen pretty angry at him, telling him to shut up. I made sure to make them both aware they were not receiving any more drinks. About a good 20 minutes pass and my coworker, we'll call him B, and I were on the phones at the desk, working on 2 separate guest issues. I happened to turn around and saw Karen lying on the floor. I immediately went over to ask what happened and if she was okay. She laughingly explained she fell over one of the lobby chairs. B goes and grabs her a water before asking her if she needed medical assistance, while I grabbed the hotel wheelchair. She declined assistance, but accepted the wheelchair, and out of instinct, I handed B an incident report to get filled out, as it's corporate policy. Now, Ken did not like the idea of his wife answering questions or filling out an incident form without his consent, like it's still the 50s or something. He starts yelling up a storm about, "Nobody talks to my wife but me," or "We ain't signing no BS because we've done nothing wrong." Now, B, who had been understanding as heck and professional as could be, was understandably upset by Ken's ranting. Seeing the proverbial crap show about to go down, B starts giving Ken the verbal smackdown about, "I will have the cops escort you and your stuff out if you do not keep a nice mouth around me." I opted to call the local non-emergency as a precaution. Boy, was I glad I did. Right as I get off the phone with the cops, Ken begins to go on the craziest rant of the century. He straight up grabs B and says, "I bet you like that, don't you?" To which B straight up hit his hand with the clipboard and declared we were going to have to ask them to leave as soon as the cops got here. B comes back to the desk while I'm calling corporate to report the issue and flag their account as a DNR. Ken's still going on his rant for a good 10 minutes. At this time, people are starting to come back from dinner and are passing through watching this old man screaming crazy things at B. While trying to hold B back, I notice that Karen's ankle is very swollen. She tries to get out of the chair while screaming at her husband to shut up and ends up falling again. B tries to go help her up, but Ken starts screaming at him to not come near them and tries to lift his wife himself, ending up falling on top of her. A guest passing through, who's a retired firefighter, came to help pick Karen up and put her back in the wheelchair. He advised we call fire rescue just as a precaution should either guest be hurt. I get on the phone to call 911 and tell them that the guest's ankle is very swollen. B decides to go over and ask if the injury was from the fall or not, while alerting Karen that we called fire rescue anyway as a precaution. She blatantly states the swollen ankle was a pre-existing injury, which I wrote down immediately on my own play-by-play witness report. Ken starts getting agitated with B asking questions and gets up, pushing B into the lobby column while shouting more craziness. B immediately walks away and says to call the cops again because Ken is now drunkenly coming towards the desk and screaming at us. I call 911 to cancel the paramedics and get the police out immediately, but the cops are stuck on a high priority call. Lo and behold, the paramedics still show up, and thank God they did, because honestly, they calmed Ken down with some light conversation and confirmed Karen was okay. Right behind the paramedics, an hour after calling, the police show up. They are the two most built female and male cops I've ever seen, like honestly, body goals. And thank God, cause the nonsense that goes down next. Ken and Karen are upset because the cops are there. The cops are having none of that BS today. Karen gets out of the wheelchair and wobbles her way to the elevator, alongside Ken, who's glaring at B the entire way and still ranting. These two numbskulls don't press the floor button and end up back on all sorts of floors before finally getting off on the right one. I awkwardly ride in the elevator with the cops and lead them, and a stumbling Ken, to the room with a key. However, Karen's nowhere to be found, which makes everyone start panicking. Ken refuses to listen to the cops and takes off down the hallway, saying he needs to find Karen, and the cops now have to wrangle two drunk people while I stand there with the door open feeling useless as heck. They find Karen wandering back onto the elevator and went back down to the lobby, where B sent her back to the elevator and Ken was hiding in the stairwell. Finally, about 30 minutes into the cops being here, they get Ken and Karen into the room to start packing. Karen's starting to argue with Ken, saying it's his fault for convincing her to come to our hotel, and she starts calling him names. She tries to push Ken into the sofa, which causes him to start yelling at her. The cops are at the end of their patience, telling them to get out or get arrested. Karen and Ken keep on stalling for a near 20 minutes before finally getting their stuff into the hallway. Around this time, Ken decides it's a great time to threaten a cop. Ken's got his back against another occupied room's door, banging on it with his fist and yelling, "This is America! I can do whatever I want!" To which the cop continues to say he will arrest Ken if he doesn't stop moving. The female officer starts to coax Ken towards the elevator and attempts to give them both a chance to comply. Karen starts following the female officer, but Ken grabs her by the shirt and starts yanking her back, dragging her across the floor. So you have them bumping into all of the guest room doors and walls, screaming, "Let go of me!" and the cops shouting for Ken to let her go or get tased. The cops finally get Ken and Karen to the elevator. I decide to take the stairs and meet up with B at the front desk just in time for another officer to come in. B's speaking to that officer about pressing charges against Ken, just to be interrupted by a screaming match in the corridor leading from the elevator to the lobby. Ken's starting up a screaming rant against the cops, trying to grab a taser. The male cop grabs him and tries to cuff him, but this late 70s-year-old Ken is holding his own, and it takes 3 cops to get him in cuffs and out the front door. On the way out, Ken shoves a girl with his shoulder, which then causes the girl's mom to start yelling and talking to the cops outside. Karen ends up wobbling into the lobby with the female cop and parks herself in a chair, where she then has the audacity to say, "If I paid for the room, why can't I stay here? I had nothing to do with this mess." To which I proudly state, "By state law, I'm refusing you service." About another hour passes. I get trespass letters for both guests from the local PD, and Karen again asks why she can't stay. The female cop has to repeat what I said in the layman's terms of, "The managers want you to leave the property ASAP." Mind you, I was nice enough to find her lodging at a hotel down the street and called her a cab, so brownie points for me, I guess. By the time the show was over, it was 12:05 a.m., an hour past my shift's end time. B and myself stayed almost another hour writing reports and recalling every time possible. The most handwritten reports I've ever made. I'll update once I go in and see the amount of trouble or reward I'm in for. Update. I'm currently at work, not fired. My GM didn't even look at the report, but my AGM did praise B and I for our professionalism. Ken did try to come back to the property to get some shoes he left, ignoring the trespass letter and claiming he had no idea why he was arrested, to which my GM basically told him to get the heck out. Am I the jerk for not giving my son the PS4 we bought him for Christmas? I have a 14-year-old son, Junior. He's a pretty great kid who is normally very kind, helpful, and is just a joy. This year has been rough due to the state of the world, so my husband and I decided for Christmas we were going to update his phone and get him a PS4 Pro with a couple of games he really likes. We already have a few game systems, but he's been begging for a game system for his room that's solely his. We hid it with all of the kids' presents in our locked closet that the kids know not to go into because it has our gun safe, so major no-no in our home. A few nights ago, my husband and I went to the store, leaving the kids at home, and when we got home, Junior was mad. I asked him what was wrong, and he started going off about how he found the gifts. He was beyond angry that it was the 4 and not the 5, and that the 4 was for losers. I told him he knew he wasn't to go in our closet. No idea how he got in. We have the key on our keychains, and that a game system was a privilege, not a right. He wasn't happy with this and said he didn't want a stupid PS4. I sent him to his room to calm down and grounded him. After some discussion with my husband and no attitude change over the next few days, we decided that he would no longer be getting it. We told Junior and he stormed off and called his grandparents. If you guessed I received an angry call, you would be 100% correct. My parents are furious with me. They think since I already bought it, I have no choice but to give it to him, and teenagers are just moody. I told them our minds had already been made up, that we raised the kids better than this. I was called a horrible parent who doesn't care about my kids. Am I the jerk? Edit. Well guys, Junior has found my post and has came in, apologized, asked for a second chance, and has asked if he can work for the PS4. He told me he used his school ID to get the door open because he knew the presents were in there. His dad and I are proud of him for apologizing and owning up to it, so he will be doing extra chores to earn his gift back. My wife is obsessed with video games and I don't know what to do anymore. Hello there. I'm currently typing this from my car after my wife has told me she doesn't want me near her right now, hoping this thread will be a wake-up call to her. My wife, female 33, is a big nerd, which I normally appreciate, but she's taking things way too far today. She took today off of work so she could be up at 4 a.m. to play her online game at lunch. I didn't wake up until about an hour ago, 10:30, and she was still playing. I mentioned that I was hungry, hoping we could make breakfast together, which we like to do together. She instead said that I should order us something from DoorDash. I'm in the middle of a dungeon and may be a while. I didn't really want to get takeout because we had already discussed ordering pizza tonight for dinner, and that's a lot of takeout food for one day. I calmly explained this, and she got upset and shrieked at me that she just wanted one weekend to focus on her video game. I said that it was unfair to our family for her to isolate all weekend, and she got even more mad, telling me that I have 2 hands and I can feed the darn cat. I was in tears at this point, and I did raise my voice and said that I was worried she's obsessed with this game and maybe she needs professional help. She threw her car keys at me and said that I need to get out of her face, that she works all the time and doesn't ask for much, and I need to leave her be and get out of her face for a few hours. I'm truly concerned that she has become obsessed with this online game, and I'm hoping that maybe reading this thread will wake her up to it, but I might have been the jerk too. Edit. Some additional info I forgot. It isn't just today. For the last few weeks, she's been hyping herself up for this. When the game got delayed, she moved her vacation time rather than just keep her previous day off and spend it with me. She's been absolutely freaking out about this game, and I don't understand it, and it scares me. You're the jerk. Dude, she isn't obsessed with a game. A lot of people wake up early or stay up late for the launches of games. It's not unusual. It sounds like you're just mad that she's not cooking for you and that you have to feed yourself and the cat. When you mention you like to make breakfast together, how much do you do in that? I also call BS on the calmly explained and she freaked out and went hysterical portion of this. Chances are you whined about it and she got annoyed. And do you have kids? Because if you don't and it's just you two and the cat, then how is playing a game for a few hours unfair? If she works all the time and this is her way to unwind, let her. She's not hurting anyone, and you are a grown adult capable of taking care and entertaining yourself. I also see that she said the dungeon might take a few hours, not 2 to 3 days. You didn't want this thread to wake her up. You just wanted validation from strangers online about your whining. You're the jerk. Is she right? Here are a few questions to Maul. 1. Does she work a lot? 2. Does she not ask for much most of the time? 3. Was it a special launch day rather than just a regular day? In that case, make your breakfast, feed the cat, and find something to do. If she spends most of her leisure time online and you guys don't share regular meals, that's therapy time. From what you've said, this was a special launch that she took a vacation day for. You guys often do breakfast together and you'd already planned for dinner together. There's also something unpleasantly manipulative about how you present the story, and that's never a good sign. You're either not self-aware enough to know you're trying to bias the readers, or you genuinely can't see both sides of an argument. I'd say it's therapy time, but for you both. You're the jerk. Not the jerk, but why did you marry a nerd? I can't stand the thought of my wife playing video games or watching anime. If you had married someone a little more mature, you wouldn't be in this situation right now. She sounds more like an out-of-control daughter. Life tip: don't marry someone who plays with their little toys and watches cartoons. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Let her play that game, bruh. Why you tripping though?
Don't want to let me fix people's cars for free? Alrighty then, let's do business. My grandpa was a successful man, and in his mid-60s, he decided he wanted to take a step back, so he started selling off his businesses. He sold his various businesses and spent the next few years traveling. As he approached 70, he got bored in addition to a few new grandchildren, so he needed a bigger house. He sold the old home that he had bought after he got back from Vietnam and bought this massive house on this large piece of land. The property also came with a massive steel barn. Not sure if he had ever told anyone about his plans, but right after he got the property, he dumped a ton of money into tools and equipment and converted his barn into a mechanic's dream. Some things I remember having. He had a professional lift, capable of lifting full-size trucks. He had those professional oil catchers you see at Quick Lubes. He had a dedicated air compressor system that was designed to power all his power tools. He had a tire machine to mount new tires. He had so much equipment, his tool corner was a massive corner of this massive barn. His plan? To fix cars, especially for people in need. He lived in a rural community. If you didn't have a car, that was a big problem. So he let everyone know at his local church that he was willing to work on their cars if they provided the parts. He only took a few jobs a week. He was doing this to enjoy himself and help those who needed it. He'd of course change oil, change the transmission fluid, and all kinds of various repairs. My grandpa was a talented mechanic. However, he kept the amount of work limited. He was also selective. If you were in need, he'd want to fix your cars. If you had the means to pay, he'd decline and ask you to go elsewhere. One day, the owner of the local car dealership came by and told my grandpa he needed to stop fixing other people's cars because he wasn't properly licensed, didn't have the proper insurances, and he was hurting his business. My grandpa explained this is just his hobby. He only does a few cars a week. The owner told him he needs to cut it out or he's going to sue my grandpa out of business. My grandpa said he laughed over this. What business was this guy going to sue him out of? The owner walked out. A little while later, my grandpa got served, and he was being sued by the owner of the car dealership. My grandpa thought he'd take a trip down to the dealership and try and reason with this man. My grandpa hoped he could come to an understanding. My grandpa spoke to the owner and basically explained, he only works on cars for people who are down on their luck. The fact is, the people's cars he fixes probably couldn't afford to pay a professional dealership to fix their vehicle. He only does a few cars a week. He's not all that interested into getting in a fight over his hobby, but he ain't going to back down. Well, they ended up in court. By this point, my grandpa had hired a lawyer who was able to get the city to approve a commercial garage on his property. It helped that he lived on the outskirts of town and had 6 acres of property. The court told my grandpa his auto repair shop is operating illegally. If my grandpa wants to continue, he's going to need to get a business license, get the proper insurances, and if he does that, he will be good to go. Now, what do you think a man who has nothing but time and money in this situation is going to do? He's going to get his business license and insurances, of course, which he did, and that surprised no one. But he went further. Got a dedicated phone line ran into his shop, hired a full-time mechanic, put up a professional sign, set up a little waiting area with a water cooler. What shocked everyone even more, he ran a local TV ad saying he was a pay-what-you-can mechanic shop, reservations only, put ads in the newspaper saying the same thing. Yes, folks, that's right. My grandpa is not only a licensed, legal auto repair business, he has a certified mechanic on his payroll, and he's running ads. As for his prices, they were quite simple. You either bring the parts yourself and pay the mechanic whatever you wanted. Mechanic got a separate wage for my grandpa, so if you couldn't pay anything, that was fine. Had my grandpa sourced your parts, he'd charge you at the parts, and you'd pay the mechanic whatever you want. My grandpa started taking jobs, and boy, did that shop get busy. It was impossible to beat Grandpa's price. Grandpa was essentially paying to fix your cars for you. My grandpa would spend his days with the mechanic that he had hired working on cars. He loved it. The owner of the local car dealership was furious. He sued my grandpa again. They went to court, and the judge basically said my grandpa owned a licensed, insured auto repair business. What he charges his customers for his services is completely up to him, even if that means doing the work for free. About a year or so later, my grandpa gets a call from a lawyer who says he's representing a potential buyer of the local car dealership. However, the buyer wants to speak to my grandpa. My grandpa agreed. He sat down with a new potential buyer who expressed his concerns about buying the dealership. Service is a major profit center for a dealership, and he's considering buying the local dealership. However, he doesn't want to buy the dealership if my grandpa is going to keep operating the way he is, because it's impossible for a for-profit business to compete against someone selling their services for free. My grandpa agrees that there's no way someone looking to make a profitable business could ever compete against him, so they came to an agreement. The owner buys the dealership, and my grandpa would only work on a few cars a week, maybe 5 to 6. Only work on people's cars who are down on their luck and probably too poor to be able to pay a professional dealership to fix their car. Any parts he needs, he will buy from the dealership. Any work he declined, he'd refer to the dealership. The new owner of the dealership agreed to. Dealership must agree to let my grandpa be, stay out of his way, and dealership must hire his mechanic. They shook hands. The local dealership was bought out, and for the next 9 years, my grandpa would fix people's cars who were down on their luck. If he had to buy the parts, he'd buy them from the dealership. And as for that mechanic my grandpa hired, he ended up becoming the service manager and did quite well for himself. As for my grandpa, when he was 80, he had a heart attack in his shop. Luckily, one of his grandkids was there, and they got him to the hospital and he made a full recovery. But the doctor told him his body couldn't handle working in that garage anymore. He ended up shutting down after that. For the next 3 years, he looked out his kitchen window, staring at his shop, remembering all the fun he had in his garage. He passed away at 83, surrounded by friends and family. Reply: I like that when people have forget you money and they use it for good, unselfish deeds. OP: he did have forget you money. My dad was concerned with the fact that my grandpa was paying a mechanic a full-time wage, yet not bringing in any revenue to even offset the mechanic's cost. My grandpa said, "Son, I could write that man, the mechanic, a check right now, so large he could live comfortably for the rest of his life and never work again. So don't worry what I'm paying him." My grandpa was a successful businessman, but he always had compassion. He did a lot of things throughout his life for the benefits of others. He once told me he believed in karma and what goes around comes around. So if he helps someone out, even if that person can never repay him, one day, some way, he will get repaid. I'm just rambling. But as an example, there was this family, a husband and wife with 3 kids. Well, the husband was lost in a car accident. The wife was struggling to make ends meet. At the time, my grandpa owned a grocery store. For the first month after her husband passed, my grandpa refused to charge her for the groceries she bought. The woman got a job. It didn't pay a lot, but it was a job. She insisted she pay. My grandpa agreed, but she'd get a 50% discount. Any grocery store that is giving a 50% discount on everything is losing money. When she got promoted at her job several years later, my grandpa went back to charging her full price. Am I the jerk for telling my cousin it's his own fault that his adult daughter isn't as successful as her friends? I'm 28, female, and my second cousin, 53, male, has been going on and on non-stop lately to the rest of our family about how disappointing his daughter, 24, female, is for not being a real adult and being a lot less successful than her friends. My cousin has a group of friends his age whose kids his daughter grew up with, and their kids have all been close friends with his daughter forever. My cousin strongly believes kids shouldn't receive any help from their parents in life once they turn 18, and parents have no responsibilities once their kids are of age. So he cut his daughter off on her 18th birthday and refused to pay for her college or anything, even though he had plenty of money for it. She went to a state school and still lives with multiple roommates in a crappy apartment after graduating, and she has an average job. She has no savings or investments since she's paying off tens of thousands in student debt. Meanwhile, all her friends who she grew up with, my cousin's friends' kids, had good parents who paid for their college and helped them financially, and they're all vastly more successful than his daughter. They went to high-ranking colleges since their parents were actually supportive financially, graduated debt-free, and they all have well-paying jobs now. They're all living in nice lofts without roommates and are starting to do adult things, like putting down mortgages on homes. Most of them have a lot of savings and investments already since they have no student debt. My cousin is furious with his daughter since she's in crippling debt and still has roommates, and he always hears from his friends about all the great things their kids are doing. He calls her his greatest disappointment and a failure, and they aren't talking because they hate each other. He constantly whines about what a useless kid he has. I just told him to shut up already. If he wanted his daughter to be successful, he would have been a good parent and financially supported her. He clearly wanted her to fail, so he can't play victim now that she's doing much worse in life than all his friends' kids. Not the jerk. At 24, she has 1. Graduated college, and I find nothing subpar about attending a state college. Went to one myself. 2. Is gainfully employed. 3. Is responsibly paying their debts. May I please place a wager that while he cut her off because she needed to stand on her own 2 feet, he also didn't stop claiming her on his taxes to get the income credit, preventing her from applying for grants. 4. Lives independently from him. At 53, he is 1. Still weighing his own success on the shoulders of his kid. And 2. Defines their success to the Joneses, when the Joneses actually gave a crap about their kid and gave them a massive leg up. He didn't even provide boots with soles. I don't know. I'm feeling like 1 out of 2 listed above is actually doing great and is an absolute success, especially after surviving a dad like that. Your cousin should see this thread to know how great they're doing and how many people are rooting for her. I kept my job and the villain got punished. Some years ago, I got a job tankering a barge. A barge is basically a floating container that gets towed around port to port. Tankering means to load it with fuel, or whatever product you carry, and discharge it in another port. There were 2 other tankermen, but we worked 4 weeks on, 2 weeks home, so in my 4 weeks, I'd work 2 weeks with one of the other tankermen, 2 weeks with the other. I was pretty new to tankering, but I had been working on boats for a few years and enjoyed it. There was little I liked more than getting on a ratty, rusty boat and chipping rust and painting until the boat was looking sharp. But I was a novice tankerman. And this boat was not looking sharp. Rust everywhere, storerooms a mess, dirty inside and out. The 2 other tankermen were of the opinion they were tankermen only, meaning they did nothing but tanker the barge, despite their job titles being deckhand/tankerman. They felt chipping and painting was beneath them and did no other work. Both of them were from down south. One Cajun, I'll call Gumbo, and a guy from Mobile, I'll call Darnell. From my first trip, they both took a dislike to me. Darnell mostly because he was lazy and just wanted to hang out on the stern and fish. Once I started busting tail around the ship, he knew he had to start doing something, and he didn't like that. Gumbo, however, he really hated me. He considered himself barge captain, a title that didn't exist except in his mind, and saw me as a threat to his imaginary throne by improving things. It wasn't just the boat. I got all the old load plans out of the places they were cramming them, organized them by fuel amount, and put them in a binder. That way, when the customer said, "Please load 68,840 barrels for us," I would flip to the closest previous load to that amount, and we would see how much to put in each tank to match the amount. As a result, loads started getting closer and closer to the requested amount, making the customer happy. Gumbo and Darnell tended to just wing it, but being new, I was a little retentive about doing it properly. When I am in unfamiliar territory, I tend to be retentive to the point of OCD to make sure I get it right. Also, I really did not want an oil spill on my watch. This went on for months, me getting more and more comfortable with tankering and annoying the other 2 by organizing storerooms, cleaning and organizing lockers, and generally making the boat a better place. Heck, I was even cooking. Strangely, there weren't too many accolades coming my way, and thanks to the assistant engineer, Jim Bob, I found out why. You see, when Big Boss would come, it would tend to be when I was home. Gumbo and Darnell were bad-mouthing me behind my back, harping on my lack of experience, magnifying small errors, and concern trolling that they were just trying to be safe. Even worse, all the changes I made, they took credit for. It wasn't, "Five Frog cleaned out the paint locker." It was, "We got the paint locker cleaned out." Jim Bob often worked extra hitches and was a witness to everything. Jim Bob was a good guy, but from a poor town in Louisiana, dropped out of high school at 15 and was functionally illiterate. His illiteracy kept him from advancing, and as he was the only crew member to befriend me, I helped him out with his job, showing him all kinds of tips to streamline things, like putting an Excel spreadsheet on his work computer that allowed him to quickly track and monitor fuel and lube use. After a while, he began relaying to me what was happening behind my back. His exact words, "You and I are like brothers, so I say this to you as a brother. They're out to get you." I kind of figured this was what was going on, as they had both begun to play the passive-aggressive game we in the industry call playing games, so I knew I was odd man out. About this time, one of the barge's pumps went out, and the first thing the mechanic said was it was due to a lack of maintenance, meaning tankermen weren't lubing, oiling, or greasing the pumps. At crew change, Big Boss came down to chew us all out, and like a fool, I said I had no idea we were supposed to do these things. Naturally, 100% of the blame came down on me for this, and my response was humility, asking what needed to be done. Big Boss made out a maintenance plan that the pumps would be serviced every 2 weeks, to be done by the tankermen returning, with a log of the work done to be completed. After what Jim Bob told me, I decided to adhere to compliance to the point of obsession. I would know those pumps so well, I could teach a course on them. As I had just returned that day, I went full-on OCD, doing every check, measurement, fluid level twice, and logging it all. I asked Jim Bob what kind of grease and how many squirts to use. I counted the squirts and logged them. He had all the grease, so I got it from him. I logged all of my maintenance in the log book. Not only that, Jim Bob had all the grease in the engine room, so I had to get it from him. I logged that too. 1 tube marine grade, number 2345, whatever. Jim Bob and I also went over to the pump with a fine-tooth comb and found every one of the grease points. I added that list to the maintenance log. Funnily, I noticed that whenever I came back, the logbook, which was really just a handful of pages set aside in a crappy notebook we kept in the crew area, hadn't been updated since I'd left. It occurred to me that I was the whipping boy. Gumbo and Darnell really thought they had me where they wanted me and didn't do anything on the barge. Months later, one of the other barges had a minor fire due to overheating, about 3 days before I was supposed to arrive. Company hired a third party to check all maintenance fleet-wide, and ours didn't do well. Big Boss came down with notes to ensure we were following the protocol he laid down. Big Boss asked if we'd been doing the required maintenance. At this point, I'd been done over by these guys for over a year and had calmly practiced my response to any question. When Big Boss asked if we'd been following the protocol, I replied that I did it within a day of my arrival, every 6 weeks. Darnell mentioned that the pumps were so dry when he arrived, it looks like they ain't been greased in months. I replied that I could guarantee they had been greased at least once every 6 weeks, as I was the one that greased them. Then Darnell made the mistake of saying something that set the whole situation aflame. "Okay, well, if you say you've been doing maintenance, okay. They just look to me like they're starved for oil." Me. I get them the day I get back every time. I even log my work. "Do you?" Darnell. "Log it where? Where do you log it?" Drunk Captain. "I ain't never got a request to log anything." Me. "In the maintenance log Big Boss requested months ago." Gumbo and Darnell. "What? What log is that?" The logbook tended to be ignored by the other two, and usually when I got back, it was buried under newspapers and magazines. I walked up to the tray underneath the TV and pulled it out. I casually flipped to the maintenance log section and showed them the places I had logged the work I had done. As an added bonus, I actually started an entry for the next guy, so all he had to do was fill in numbers. Stuff like name, date serviced, hours run, oil amount added, filters changed, yes or no. Naturally, it was all blank. As an added bonus, I had made sure to not wash my hands before log entries, so I couldn't be accused of pencil whipping due to greasy fingerprints. I sat quietly while Big Boss, Gumbo, Darnell, and the captain read the maintenance log, consisting of my entries and my entries only. Me and Jim Bob just watched each other, expressionless. Both Gumbo and Darnell tried to cover for each other, claiming they had seen the other doing the required maintenance, but Big Boss was no dummy. "Where'd you get the grease and filters from? I see no record of transfer from the engine room to the barge." Darnell said, "Well, we get the grease from Jim Bob all the time. I've asked for at least 4 or 5 tubes. Ain't I, Jim Bob?" All eyes on Jim Bob. Jim Bob did the most amazing thing. Scowling at Darnell, he stood up, threw his coffee cup in the trash, and walked the 20 feet to his cabin. The slamming of the door was like a judge's gavel coming down. I took the dark path. "Big Boss, I'm sorry for any problems. After what happened in April, I've been obsessed with ensuring the pumps were properly maintained on my watch. I'm happy to show you where all 17 grease points are and my routine for servicing them. I know the pumps backwards and forwards at this point." "Five Frog, that won't be necessary. I've seen all I need to." He snapped the logbook shut and told the captain, "We'll talk later," and disembarked the vessel without another word. There's no juicy ending here. Gumbo got transferred to the punishment boat, the worst boat/barge in the fleet, and got written up for arguing with that captain on his first hitch, last I heard. We got a new tankerman, bizarrely a cousin of Darnell's, but I was pretty confident at this point and took the lead in training him. Darnell was a always be on the winning team kind of guy and let me take the lead. We wound up with a pretty good crew, hard-working, hard-partying, just how I like it. When they hired a new captain, he was a guy that had come up with Big Boss, which is why he got the job. And he told Big Boss, "You know Five Frog is about the only guy worth a darn on here." I still have the eval he wrote for me. It's on my darn LinkedIn page. Am I the jerk for refusing to babysit my neighbor's kids? My husband and I, female, moved into a new neighborhood a few weeks back. The new house is great. We have our own yard, and both of us and our doggies enjoy it a lot. We are childless, and we don't plan on having kids. We're not comfortable around them, especially the young ones, and we have zero experience in dealing with them. Our neighborhood is full of parents. We're the only childless couple. Since we moved in, we've been friendly with our neighbors and their kids, but we don't join their activities. They have barbecue parties, swimming pool parties, and they gather with their kids, etc. And we don't really like the noise of kids, so we just keep our distance. Some have made rude comments about this, saying we need to socialize more, and I kept explaining that's how we are, and they need to accept it. Anyways, yesterday one neighbor came to me asking if I could babysit her 2 kids, who are 5 and 7, all day on Saturday. I politely declined, explaining that I don't feel comfortable taking care of them. And even if I were, I have no time to babysit because I'm doing some freelancing in the weekend, which I don't want to reschedule since I'm very much enjoying it and making money out of it. She said okay and left. Then her husband came and demanded I explain myself. I said I already did, and he said that not feeling comfortable isn't a reason, and I'm a lady, how can I possibly feel uncomfortable? That annoyed me, and I snapped, telling him he doesn't get to dictate what I'm supposed to feel, and I have no obligation to watch their kids. There are many other parents in the neighborhood that can do that, or they could hire a babysitter. He said, why hire when I'm childless and available for free? I got really angry and screamed at him that I'm not a free babysitter just because I don't have my own kids. I told him to buzz off and never come to me with such ridiculous demands. The neighborhood group chat blew up immediately with all sorts of bad comments about me. They've been calling me names for refusing to help. When my husband came home, he was shocked at their demands and wanted to go yell at them some, but I stopped him. Now, some of the comments in the chat made me think they're right, and I am the jerk. It's tough raising kids, and it's difficult to find reliable babysitters. So, am I the jerk for not helping the parents? I was pretty confident I'm not the jerk, but now I don't know anymore. Not the jerk. Oh, heck no. I don't know what kind of neighborhood you moved into, but this is not okay. You are not the jerk, nor will you ever be. You have no obligation to watch anyone's kids except your own. The fact that you have none means that you are off the hook. I'm appalled that these people would even think such a thing. And because you're a lady, you should feel comfortable babysitting? What the heck? I don't blame you for losing your temper. The husband sounds like an insufferable jerk, and the fact that the chat is supporting it makes me think he has a following. I have to wonder if there are plenty that don't agree with this, but just don't want to get involved because they'll have to deal with him. Do not give into this madness. You don't owe anyone anything, especially free babysitting. Good Lord. Am I the jerk for calling my brother out on his lie about supposedly living in poverty? My parents had me, 29, male, young, so growing up, we lived in a bad neighborhood. And I mean like drive-bys almost daily, police always poking around, helicopters, never was allowed to play outside. And my parents struggled to make ends meet, so sometimes didn't even get proper meals. My dad got a better, high-paying job when I was around 7 or 8, and we moved to a way nicer neighborhood, and everything was different. By the time my brother was born, 21, male, we had a house with our own rooms in a more suburban area, got to go to a private school, got a nanny, and everything. Basically, was a different lifestyle from the one I had at first. My parents got me into therapy for some stuff I saw as a kid. Still suffer from PTSD, but not as severe from when I was a teen. They were never ashamed to tell him about the kind of life we had before, and I used to share stories about crazy stuff that happened to me when we got older. He's been going out with his girlfriend for almost 2 years, but we don't see her that often. She came over last weekend for brunch, and we were all just chatting. Conversation got to where I went to school as a kid, and she said something like, "Oh yeah, Devin told me how bad it got at that school." And I was thinking, what? Devin never went there? Then she was confused. Obviously, my brother was nervous. My dad asked some more stuff, like what else did he tell her? As it turns out, almost all the stuff I talked about to him that happened to me, he lied to her and said it happened to him, and I called him out right there. First of all, I was mad for him making up such pointless lies, but also for thinking it's okay to use my traumas for himself. I don't even get why. It's not cool to have experienced the things I have. Devin was super red, that I could tell. My dad was kind of scolding him too. His girlfriend looked really uncomfortable and like she couldn't believe why he'd tell her all that she actually cried for him when he told her about his horrible childhood. We were all pretty mad, so that whole thing ended quickly. My brother hasn't stopped saying crap. Dad and I are on the same page, but my mom really thinks I was a jerk because it was not the time and place to have that discussion. My brother says it was a bunch of harmless lies that I didn't need to point out at the moment, since now his girlfriend isn't happy with him. Yeah, he lied, I know, but was I the jerk for pointing it out when I did? Was just so mad it really didn't occur to me if it was the right moment to say something. Karen neighbor asks me to close my windows. I, 30 female, work from home. I also obviously live at home. I never have my curtains or blinds closed unless it's too sunny out or too hot. The issue. Recently, my neighbors approached me when I was outside taking out the trash and informed me that they were uncomfortable with being able to see into my windows and the fact that I can always see into theirs. I don't. Frankly, I could give a hoot about what my neighbors are doing. I'm either watching TV, working, or sleeping, or not at home. I just told them not to worry because I'm not looking anyways. They went on about my life and thought little more of it. A few weeks passed, and then my neighbors caught me outside again while I was walking home and they were washing their car. This time, they were much more abrasive, essentially telling me I needed to close my blinds from now on because they're tired of being uncomfortable with my windows always open. I again told them I don't pay attention to them, and they're the ones constantly checking in. They can close their own blinds. Then they said that they stopped using their patio because they can see me working and they know I'm taking glances at them. I just laughed at them at that point and told them they're nowhere near as interesting as they think for me to waste my time looking at them. Petty, I know, but I didn't appreciate their attitude. This was a few days ago. I told some friends, and naturally some are on my side and others are telling me I'm creepy and I just need to close my blinds like a normal person. Now I'm second guessing myself and I'm looking to you, Reddit. I don't think I'm the jerk here, but maybe I'm biased towards myself and my own needs. So, am I the jerk? Edit, to note, as there's been some confusion about how the setup is. We're not in the same building. I live in a corner unit of my building. Very lucky, no neighbors above or below me in my building on the second floor. Directly across from me is another older apartment building with giant evergreen trees for privacy, like 50 to 75 feet tall. They're not the issue. The neighbors with the issue are beside that building to the left, so they have to look diagonally across the alley to look into my apartment. Not the jerk. Your neighbors are ridiculously paranoid. If they have such a problem with your blinds open, why don't they just close theirs? The current situation is only bothering them, so they should be the ones to come up with a solution. You're the jerk. We had a similar situation once when I caught my son using binoculars to look into the neighbor's window. Turned out he had a perfect view into their living room and was watching our neighbor do workout DVDs. I went over and explained the situation, hoping she would be reasonable, but of course she got an attitude with me. Fortunately, we have a great HOA, and after getting a warning letter, she now keeps her blinds shut most of the time. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you close your blinds to keep the neighbors happy or not? Please let us know.
I'd open them even more and wave at them every time I see them. You want creepy? I'll show you creepy.
Try to pile on more work to raise your bonus? Not gonna happen. I oversee a team of a dozen folks when it's fully staffed. We had a fellow move out of state for school, a lady retire to care for her grandkids when her daughter got sick, then 3 people promote up within the organization all within 4 weeks' time, so almost half the team suddenly became unavailable. While I'm involved in the recruiting and onboarding process, management up to 3 levels above me tends to be a bottleneck. Each time someone let me know that they're moving on, I informed management and gave them a running total. We're at 84% staffing, we're at 66% staffing, etc. Ads were placed, first round interviews conducted by me and a team lead. Second interviews recommended to the next level of management, and that's where the process suddenly stopped. For a week, then 2, then 3. It commonly takes 2 to 3 weeks after hire to bring a new person up to speed to start being productive, and perhaps 8 weeks for a new person to reach 90 to 95% of median productivity goals. The existing team was ready to pull together and work harder to keep up the work, but I took each one aside and coached them that the heavy workload they were under was not their problem to solve. Yes, customers were complaining. Yes, other groups in the organization were getting frustrated that our team wasn't getting things done in a timely fashion. I encouraged them to work efficiently and well, but to not put in extra unpaid time or contribute their own resources to projects. And if anyone was insistent in their complaints regarding the team's productivity, send them to me and I would explain the situation. Middle and upper manglement across the organization started vocalizing about how little work was getting done. When I played the Uno reverse card that, hey, all we need is adequate, well-trained staff and we'll be able to keep up, and managers 1, 2, and probably executive 1 all have potential interviewees on their desk for almost a month now, I started getting the stink eye from those folks. I found out later that one or a couple of these folks that I report to and were also the next rungs in the hiring ladder had proposed the idea that this team could run just as well a little leaner, so they arranged to find out. Oopsie daisy. Metrics indicated that organizational goals weren't met because of their decision, but I was able to provide the stats that proved that the team's individual goals were met, and that in many respects, per-person efficiencies were improved. My team members got their bonus, middle management failed to achieve, so no bonus for them that year. Reply: well done. Congrats on backing up and looking out for your team. 2 years ago, I was part of a team of 6. Then 2 were let go. Then another left for a new job. Then the lockdown and 1 was laid off. Then another hit her breaking point and left. By May, I was the only one left. I tried, but didn't run myself into the ground. Had a meltdown on my boss and got a substantial raise. Let a lot of things go as I prioritized my tasks. We're back up to 5 now, and the auditors are asking questions about why stuff wasn't done in the latter part of 2019 and early 2020. Oops. I bluntly told the auditors that we had a drastic staff decrease and I was not able to do the work of 6 people. They understood completely, but middle management is now scrambling to do all the missed work, and I got another raise because absolutely nothing in my job description was pinged by the auditors. Am I the jerk for ruining my boyfriend's favorite hiking trail? My 22 female boyfriend, 24 male, is an avid outdoorsman. He grew up camping and hiking often. I, on the other hand, did not. I think I went camping once when I was little and sat in my grandma's RV pouting the entire time. My boyfriend and I have now been dating for 6 months, and as our little anniversary present, my boyfriend wanted to take me to his favorite hiking spot. We live in a warmer state, so hiking this time of year isn't abnormal. I was a little nervous about it, but agreed because I definitely see him as the person I'm going to marry, which means adapting to his lifestyle as well. So we went on a sunrise hike up a mountain that was a little over an hour away from us. The hike was just over 3 miles total and wasn't too difficult for beginners. Before going, my boyfriend gave me the safety rundown and pushed that I drink a ton of water. When we got to the trailhead, I needed to go to the bathroom slightly and mentioned to my boyfriend finding the bathroom at the beginning of the trailhead, which I believed to be just around the little hill. He brushed it off though and suggested we get going so we don't miss the most beautiful part of the sunrise, so I agreed. During the first half of the hike, my boyfriend kept pushing for me to drink water to the point where I felt like I was going to throw up and my bladder was going to explode. When we got to the best part of the hike, we sat there for a few minutes before I mentioned heading back down because at this point, I really needed to find that bathroom. My boyfriend insisted we stay for a few more minutes until I finally dragged him up. Listen, I've never peed outside my entire life, but I must have drank so much water, my bladder just couldn't take it. Before we even made it back down, I knew I was about to go. I kept mentioning it to my boyfriend and he kept comforting me, saying it was okay, saying I can make it. Unfortunately, I could not make it. I apologized profusely, but told him I had to duck behind a big rock a little ways off the trailhead or I was going to go on myself. He was angry, scoffed and huffed as I asked him to stand watch, but instead he just stood by the trail, angry as ever. And to make matters worse, an older couple that was cutting through some of the brush walked right by me but didn't say anything. So yeah, my boyfriend is understandably furious with me, not only for what I did, but also for rushing our beautiful view. This is his favorite hiking spot and I ruined it. I feel terrible, but I also feel like it was something that I couldn't control. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Why can't he ever go back there? Was he banned for life because nature called while out in nature? Stuff like that happens all the time. If he wanted you to enjoy the hike, he should have made it enjoyable for you. And he also should have taken into consideration when you gotta go, you gotta go. He should have allowed you a minute to go prior to going on the trail when you said you had to go the first time. If that wasn't a possibility when you were up at the sunset viewing spot and really had to go, he should have helped you find a safe spot. Then you would not have had to rush back down. Of course you ducked behind a big rock and took care of business. That's what people do. If you were on the months-long, hundreds of miles-long Appalachian Trail, does he think they have porta potties stationed along the trail? Or do you hold it until you get to a tiny rural town scattered along it? What the heck is wrong with them? On shorter walks and hikes too, this is the norm. The older couple ignored you because they were sane and reasonable people and they were being discreet and polite, like your boyfriend should have been. Your boyfriend should have known better, pushing you to drink so much water so fast. He's being weird and controlling. This is just wrong. Am I the jerk for telling my parents that I make more than both my siblings when they told me to get a real job? I'm a nanny to 2 special needs kids. There's a very high demand for nannies for special needs kids because 3 special needs daycares in my country shut down. So I make approximately $120,000 a year and live in the family's guest house rent-free, and they bought me a car so I can drive the kids around. My parents have the belief that any job in childcare isn't a real job. They went so far as to call my aunt, she majored in child development, and had her tell me how broke she is when I said I wanted to major in early childhood education. Then they told me I could either pick an acceptable major or they wouldn't pay for my college. I cut contact with them for a while in college and we recently started talking again. I've been in contact with my siblings though. My parents recently asked about my job and education and were not happy when I said I'm a nanny and have my master's in special education. They made a comment that I'm working the same job that I've had since I was 15 and how I'll be broke forever. Then they told me to get a real job like my brother, an accountant, and my sister, a nurse. I was upset and told my parents that I make more than both my brother and sister and I don't have to pay rent, for car payments, or for gas. They hung up and I got a text from my sister saying I made her look bad to our parents. My brother said I should have just kept my mouth shut. Am I the jerk for telling my parents how much I make? Not the jerk. Your parents, quite roundly, are the jerks. Honestly, my jaw dropped when I saw $120,000. I've been working for 20 years, and that's a great living right there. Congratulations and well done to your good self. I can see why you dropped contact with your parents. Your siblings' responses really should have given them a reason to self-reflect on why they haven't done the same rather than throw shade on you. Not the jerk. You're an adult, and they're trying to control your choices. You've done well for yourself, and they should be proud. But no, they refuse to accept that you're doing what you want to do. You do make more than them, and you have a pretty great setup for yourself as well, so you did nothing wrong by telling them the truth. It may be time to cut them out again, because it seems they have no respect for you or your boundaries. New Army captain tries to end her career. I used to be an armorer in the US Army. I was the person in charge of securing and maintaining all the weapons. I was stationed overseas at a base that only had one arms room, and I was the guy who ran it. So instead of just being responsible for the weapons in my unit, I was responsible for all the weapons in the entire post. On paper, that's a job that's supposed to be done by an E6 with a 2-person support staff. In reality, the position was chronically short-staffed. It was just me, as an E4, doing the job of 3 people. Because the position was critical to the operations of a bunch of different units, including things like PSYOPs and Special Forces, where everything about them is classified by default, and joint operations with the Navy and Air Force, and a few foreign militaries who were working with the US, I had to get a security clearance that was higher than everyone else in my own unit. As far as I knew, there were only 4 other people on the post with clearance high enough to do what I did, and they were all officers. This led to some amusing situations where I was accidentally called for security briefings that were way above my pay grade. That sucked because I was on call all the time and had to go to work anytime anyone needed a weapon. Being on call was supposed to be a duty rotation, but I was the only one who could do it, so I slept in the arms room a lot. I wanted to make sure I had as little to do as possible, so I got very good at my job. How good? During an Army-wide review of the entire supply chain, my post was found to be the best-run arms room in the entire Army. I won a medal and everything. Then we had a change in command, and the new captain hated that I didn't have to go on training exercises because I wasn't allowed to be more than 30 minutes away from the arms room ever. The compliance. The new captain had absolutely determined to take me on a training mission. She had somehow gotten it into her head that I was a slacker, which I absolutely was, but only because I was efficient and ticked off that I never got to leave the base. So she drew up a bunch of paperwork to sign the arms room over to the supply sergeant. I refused to sign because the person with all the ammo and the person with all the weapons are supposed to be different people. Next, she tried to sign the arms room over to the PSYOPs company commander. I refused to sign because that commander had become a friend of mine, so I knew he was required to leave the base weekly for security briefings. Finally, she tried to sign the arms room over to our company's supply lieutenant. I tried to explain that the lieutenant didn't have high enough security clearance, but she cut me off. She said she was tired of my excuses. Then she ordered me to sign and threatened me with an Article 15. I wrote, "under duress," on the paperwork. She didn't even look at the signature. So I sent an email to the warrant officer who was in charge of logistics for the area. He was the guy who'd given me the award I mentioned earlier, so he was ticked when he found out what was going on, and went on the crappy little weekend training exercise and basically enjoyed my vacation. That sequence of events happened on a Friday afternoon. The chief didn't get my email until Monday morning. On Monday afternoon, my captain was relieved of command. I eventually had to testify at her disciplinary hearing. My second favorite part of the whole experience was the supply lieutenant, who got a slap on the wrist for inadvertently obeying illegal orders because he hadn't learned the regulations before signing, saying, "Is it like that for you all the time? This has to change." My favorite part was the full bird colonel in charge of the hearing asking my former commander, "Your soldier was awarded for being the best at his job in the entire army. After he refused your orders the first few times, why didn't you start asking questions?" Edit. Some clarity about a bunch of questions I've been getting. This was at Camp High Lay. It doesn't exist anymore, but you can look it up to see all the different units that were there. They all use the same arms room, and yes, that's weird and it sucked. I had a top secret clearance. It was explained to me that knowing the weapons logistics of the whole post was a big deal. I had the training and deployment schedules of 24 units, including foreign militaries, other branches, and a security force group. That's a lot of important information, and it was definitely above my pay grade. I absolutely should not have been the person doing that job, but I was. I knew I needed to cover myself, which is why I was so careful about record keeping. There were probably more than 4 people with top secret clearance on the base. I only knew of 4. Unsurprisingly, none of them wanted to do my job, and had the clout to say no when asked. I didn't actually go to any fancy security briefings. I was mistakenly called twice and promptly told to leave. I think the person scheduling the briefings just sent an email to everyone who had a top secret clearance. After the second time, I stopped getting them, so someone must have sorted it out. At the disciplinary hearing, I was called to answer questions. I showed up, answered, and was dismissed. It was a long drive to another base for 30 minutes of standing and talking. I don't know anything about the results. The captain didn't come back, that's all I know. The award that I won is called an RCOM. It's not uncommon. I wasn't some kind of indispensable prodigy. I was just in a job above my pay grade and scared of messing up, so I took very meticulous records. Because I was the only one doing anything, I had to really know the system, so I got an award for being good at passing an audit. Am I the jerk for asking my husband's cousin to let me take my baby, she just turned 3 months old, to her child-free wedding? Child-free weddings are becoming really popular here. So my husband's cousin and her fiancé decided to have a child-free wedding, and I was okay with that decision because it's their wedding after all and they can do whatever they want. The problem is that the wedding will take place about 5 hours away from our house, so we have to spend a whole day away from our house, and therefore it will also be away from our kids. Therefore, 1, and the baby just turned 3 months old because they are not invited. And lately, my youngest daughter can't spend much time separated from me. I found out that I'm pregnant again recently, and I don't know why, but since then she wants to spend practically all day with me. Sometimes I can't even take a shower like a normal person because she cries until she runs out of air, which scares me because she's asthmatic. And she cries even when my husband is with her, and there's no way to calm her down. Well, a few days ago, she stayed at my in-laws' house for the night, and my mother-in-law said she was fine. But when I asked my 4-year-old daughter, she told me that the baby cried a lot, and there was no way to make her stop. So I was thinking about the wedding day, which is next Sunday, because we really want to attend. And I decided to ask my husband's cousin if I could take my baby with me on the wedding day, and I told her the truth, that lately she can't be separated from me, and that if I take her with me, she won't even notice her presence, because when my daughter is with me, she behaves really well. She hardly cries, doesn't throw any tantrums, and that she's still in that phase where she takes a few naps a day, as long as she's with me. If she is with another person, she can't even sleep more than a few minutes. And she was mad, because she said my baby will be fine spending only 1 day separated from me, and that I'm being dramatic and that she will be fine, and that she couldn't believe that I really asked her that because I know she doesn't like kids at all. I told her that if I couldn't take my baby, I wouldn't be able to attend, that only my husband would attend, and she told me if I don't attend, she would never speak to me again because she wants me to be with her on her special day. But if my baby can't attend, then neither can I. She and her well-being are my priority, and even though I love his cousin, I love my daughter more. So, am I the jerk for asking if I can take her with me, even when I know she doesn't like kids at all? Edit. I offered to pay for the money she and her fiancé spent on my plate, but she said she doesn't care because money is not a problem for her, but I'll pay for it anyway. And I told her that I will not attend a week before the wedding because it is a recent problem. A few weeks ago, my baby was fine, and she was not behaving like that, and that is not something that I can handle. Edit 2. Some of you are right. Asthma can't be detected at her age, but her pediatrician said the symptoms and attacks could certainly be asthma because a large part of my husband's family has it, including my husband, so she has more than an 80% chance to develop it. So for now, all we can do is be here for her and not let her cry until she runs out of air. Her pediatrician told me to do that. I'm not spoiling her, as some of you said. And I said throwing tantrums because those were the words of his cousin when she said that she didn't want kids at her wedding, and she doesn't understand that a newborn doesn't throw any tantrums. But it was easier to tell her that so that she could understand what I meant. I know perfectly well that a baby her age doesn't throw tantrums. Everyone sucks here. She has stated it is child-free, so you are the jerk for asking for an exception to that. Completely unacceptable. The only response is, unfortunately, I cannot attend, if you can't make arrangements. But she is also the jerk for saying she'll cut contact if you don't go. Anyone having a child-free wedding needs to accept that some won't attend due to their kids, and that's okay. She can't have it both ways, and certainly can't compel you to leave your kids. Edit from new information. My judgment hasn't changed because OP asked for an exception. If she had said, this is a new issue with my daughter, so I can't attend, or something to that effect, I would change my judgment. But asking for the exception is the issue that tips her, in my opinion. The bride is still a jerk for her response either way. Am I the jerk for financially supporting my brother's kids behind his back? A bit of context first. A few years ago, my nieces confided in me, their aunt, of how difficult their life is in their household, how they don't get things like the other kids and all the chores they have. As soon as my nieces turned 14, they expected them to get jobs, babysitting, working at their parents' restaurant, and pay rent. Not the same amount as regular rent, but each of them was expected to pay $100 a month, which I think is ridiculous and a completely unnecessary burden to place on kids, and also an unfair one since only my nieces are expected to live by this standard. While my brother, his wife, stepmom to my nieces, don't put these expectations on their other kids. My brother and his wife are of the pull yourself by bootstraps mentality, but only with my nieces. The girls then told me that they were short on rent that month and asked if I could lend them money. I was completely upset, but they begged me not to talk to their dad as it would just make their lives more difficult. So I decided to give them 2 cards in my name and put monthly money into the account for them to pay rent, buy themselves the necessities, groceries, hygiene products, entertainment, clothes, etc., and I put them on my family phone plan. We kept all of this secret. They are now both 17 and will be going to college next year, which I will be paying for since my brother refused to support them. A few days ago, the girls got into an argument with their stepmom as she wanted them to share their car, which I got them as a birthday present, with the other kids, and it was a big one. Nieces said they'd call the police and report the car stolen if anyone other than them drove their car. My brother kicked them out and told them to move come morning if they were going to be that selfish. The girls called me and I drove down to pick them up. I guess while I was driving to them, the girls went all out and lost it on everyone, and a lot of harsh words were exchanged. They also told them that they never got jobs and that I paid for their rent and other needs, and that this would be the last time they ever spoke to them. When I arrived, my brother was livid and accused me of brainwashing his daughters against him. Then, the days that followed, my father and another brother called me to tell me that I'm a jerk for supporting the girls behind everyone's back, and that if I didn't interfere with the girls, they would have learned their lesson and been back at home by now. Karen gets evicted without a warning. I've evicted multiple guests from my property, but never had an issue with a noise complaint get to this point until tonight. Our cast is me, Nice Lady, and the Mega Karen. Phone rings. Me. Front desk. This is Eat More Unicorns. How can I help you? Nice Lady. Hi, sorry to bother you, but we're trying to sleep, and the people next to us are talking really loud. Could you ask them to quiet down? Me. Of course. Just give me a few minutes and I'll take care of it. If they don't quiet down within 15 minutes, call me back and let me know. Nice Lady. Thank you. She hangs up. I go down the hall and listen to see who it is, then go back to the front desk to make the call. Management doesn't want us knocking on doors at night. I call the room. Karen. Hello? Me. Hi, this is the front desk. I'm sorry to bother you, but I got a noise complaint and was just calling to ask you to... She interrupts me.
Ugh, seriously?
She hangs up. Well, forget me then, right? 20 minutes later. Nice Lady. Hi, sorry to bother you again, but they're still being really loud. Me. I'm sorry about that. I'll ask them again. Nice Lady. Thank you. She hangs up. I call the room again. Karen.
Hello?
Me. Hi, this is the front desk. She interrupts me again.
If you call again, I'm going to come down to the desk and kick your butt.
She hangs up. Oh, is that a threat? Guess it's time to call the police. I call the police and tell them what happened. They send someone down. Officer gets here, I tell them her room number. First floor, right down the hall, so I can hear some of the things they're saying. The officers knock on the door and start talking to her. I'm not 100% sure what they said at that point, but I do hear her say,
"She's full of crap."
and "Why do I have to leave?" Eventually, she agrees to leave and comes storming into the lobby with all of her stuff, saying,
"You better not try to charge me for the night."
She's been in-house for 7 hours already. She's getting charged. I smile and say that she can call the manager tomorrow and ask him about getting her money back. I already know that's not going to happen. Officers escort her out the door. I decide to call my manager and let him know what's happening. Manager laughs and confirms she won't be getting a refund and he'll deal with her tomorrow when she calls. I mean, technically she had warnings about quieting down, but I didn't warn her I was going to evict her. That's the first and hopefully last, time I've ever evicted someone without telling them, "You have 10 minutes to pack your stuff and leave before I call the police." Teacher gets exactly what she asked for when I turn on my camera. Background: I am currently in high school, and we have Zoom meetings in almost every class, every day for online school. I dislike it, especially having to have our cameras on. I get super self-conscious that anyone in the class could be looking at me, and I wouldn't know. A user in the comments pointed out that it could be paranoia, which I think it is. Being paranoid is the best way to describe the feeling. My English teacher, who we will call Miss Stevens, is super extroverted and loves to see her students. This is all fine and dandy, but she obsesses over it. She yells at kids all the time for not having their cameras on, as she wants to see you participating in the class. I personally don't think that students should have to invite their class into their personal life for a grade. After a while, she got fed up with people ignoring her demands, so she started docking points for the day's assignment if you didn't have your camera on. I joined a meeting recently without my camera on, as per usual, and I began working on the assignment. She stayed completely silent about my camera for some reason, which I loved for that class. I could work in peace. Later that evening, I get a notification on my phone that I got a 75 on today's assignment. This was terrible for me because it took my grade in her class down to a B, and I lost my 4.0 GPA. I emailed Miss Stevens and asked if it was a mistake or anything. She said something along the lines of,
"I need to see you participating in the class, and because I couldn't, I felt it was necessary to deduct 25% from your grade."
I don't have the email right in front of me at the moment. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable turning my camera on, which I feel is totally reasonable. She gave me a hard no and said,
"Nobody is watching you in class. They're watching me because I am the teacher. You will get used to it eventually."
I was upset. All I want is a little bit of privacy. Sure, not all of the kids stare, but we all have moments where we get lost staring. I decided I would turn my camera on, but I wanted her to regret it. I downloaded a super glitchy, flashy, bright, and disgusting glitch effect that I could put over my camera using a plugin for OBS that I found online. It lets you use OBS as your camera, so I could add whatever I wanted. The next day, I show up for the meeting and turn my camera on. A few minutes into the lesson, I turn on the glitch effect and lower the frame rate of my camera to make it look like I was just lagging. Miss Stevens asked what was happening, so I replied that I think my Wi-Fi is being slow or something. She moved on with the lesson, but you could tell that she was starting to get annoyed by this constant flashing on her screen while she was talking. There aren't enough kids in the class for her to simply put me on another page, and I don't think she knows how to turn my camera off herself. I began to enjoy seeing her reaction, so after I finished my assignment, I started messing around with it a little. I started flashing random things on my camera, like pictures of Shrek, memes, whatever came to my mind pretty much. She pulled me aside after class. Keep in mind, my camera still had the glitch effect going on, and she lectured me on how having my camera on like that was distracting, even though I finished my assignment after only 15 minutes or so. I just said, "You wanted me to turn my camera on, so I did. You never told me what I had to have on my camera." She kind of rolled her eyes a little and just gave in. I don't have to have my camera on in that class anymore. She also apparently emailed my parents about me being distracting, and when I showed the plugin to my parents, they found it hilarious and didn't care all that much. I wasn't distracting any of the other students, and I was already done. No problems here. Edit. A lot of people in the comments are asking if my grade got fixed and if I contacted the principal. Both of these things happened, and I am sure my teacher got a talking to from the principal. My grade is fixed, and I'm back to having all A's. Karen gets kicked off campus. This semester, I got a new roommate, Claire, who is 19. Claire just moved to Los Angeles from out of state. Claire is very naive how Los Angeles works. She thinks she'll be famous soon. She also won't clean up after herself, and she makes everything into an argument. You have arms, you can pick things up if you don't like it there. She keeps saying things like,
"When I'm famous, you will regret talking to me like that. I'm so glad that I won't have to worry about people like you in a few years."
I'm on a school scholarship, local, and I'm a black female. Our other roommate is Mia, Latina. I've been learning Spanish off and on my whole life, so I'm having Mia help me. One night I messed up a word, and it ended up meaning something completely different that's 100% I shouldn't have said. Mia and I erupt in giggles as she's trying to correct me. Then we started saying stupid, inappropriate things like trying to come up with puns. Claire comes in and yells that,
"You need to stop talking about me."
I replied that we're making stupid jokes. If anything, I'm making fun of myself and my awful Spanish. Claire said,
"Why would you want to learn Spanish anyway?"
I say the city is called Los Angeles and there's a large Spanish-speaking population. I want to communicate with all of my coworkers. Many places hire bilinguals. Claire goes on a tirade about how we make her feel like an outsider in her own dorm and her own country. Next, Claire goes,
"Maybe Mia should go back to where she's from."
Mia loses her crap and tells Claire she was born in the valley. Maybe it's time Claire goes back to where she's from, and that's not Los Angeles. Claire starts crying and Mia leaves the campus. Mia files a complaint against Claire for what she said. I was asked to make a statement to our university backing up that Claire's microaggressive towards us. When Claire came back from her vacation, she was told she was being suspended from campus and her living arrangements were revoked. Mia and I had to leave the area while Claire packed with campus security. Now, Claire is blowing up her Instagram feed, telling everyone she was targeted. Her friends are saying awful things about Mia, myself, and Los Angeles in general. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Claire? Please let us know.
Maybe Claire can go back to where she's from. There's a special highway that she can use to get there, according to that AC/DC song.
Am I the jerk for telling my boss no to working weekends? I got hired for this salaried job where they really hyped up the work-life balance and reasonable hours in the job interview. Like the way they never expect people to stay late or work on weekends or holidays. That turned out to be BS. My boss got my personal phone number off my resume from when I applied, and after not long, he was blowing up my phone on nights and weekends asking me to come to work. I'd always not answer. Then when he'd ask on Monday why I wasn't answering my phone, I'd pull out my work phone like, "Sorry, are you sure you had the right number? I'm not seeing any missed calls." And he'd often say he called my own cell, so I'd say that I don't really use it much. I leave it home a lot, and when I do check it, I've usually got like 40 missed calls, and my voicemail is always full, so I probably miss stuff unless I'm expecting a call at a certain time. And that if he needs to reach me, he should try my work phone, because I'm very careful to follow up on any call to that within one business day. He asked me how he could reach me outside of 9 to 5 because he sees I leave my work phone on my desk at night and over the weekend. I said that honestly, I'm not glued to any phone on the weekend, so if he needs me to take a call on the weekend, could he make it a meeting request and put it on my calendar so I know to be available? Or if I know I won't be available to take a call, I can suggest an alternate time to call. He said that wasn't really going to work for him. More often, things come up last minute, and when he calls people on the weekend, it wasn't planned, and that he's not calling for a teleconference meeting, he's calling asking people to come in. I said that on the weekends, I usually have commitments that were made 1 to 3 weeks out, and I'm not often able to cancel a previous commitment with under a day notice. So if he needs me in on a weekend, it would be best if he could schedule that 3 weeks out so that I know not to make conflicting plans. He said that wasn't possible, and I said okay. He could try and reach out and I'd answer the phone if I heard it ringing. But I wasn't always on the phone, so I might not catch it always. Anyways, I've gone back to ignoring his calls, and my coworkers have gotten kind of frustrated with me, saying that coming in on weekends is part of the job and that I wasn't pulling my weight. I said that I don't know what job they signed up on, but in my job interview, I was promised regular hours and took my pay based on regular hours, so I'm working regular hours. My coworkers got frustrated and said that if everyone did what I was doing, nothing would get done. I said maybe nothing should get done then, if it's coming at the cost of y'all not being home for dinner with the family. I don't really think my coworkers see it as an option to say no, so they're angry at me because I'm doing it and they're not comfortable doing it. Am I the jerk for not working evenings or weekends? Not the jerk, but be prepared to be fired soon. Your coworkers and boss are going to be looking for any reason to get you in trouble, and if you are on probation, expect to be let go. I know it sucks, but that's the way these companies' bootlickers work. Good on you for standing your ground, and shame on your company for lying to you about the job. Not the jerk. Wasn't a stated requirement, and your boss hasn't even formalized a schedule to adhere to. You don't have to be on call all weekend because something might come up unless it's specifically enumerated part of your job. and comes with some form of compensation. Your coworkers are just upset you had the guts to say no to a bad organization. Weekends and overtime should be utilized as catch-up time if needed. If an organization cannot survive without this time, then something needs to change in the organization. You're the jerk. My business employs about 150 people. We treat them very well and in return expect them to do the same. The moment someone complains about working weekends, we get rid of them. This isn't the local burger joint, we're a financial group. If I can't count on you to be a team player, maybe you should be buffing my Lexus. Sorry kids, your mommy is a liar. On the maternal side of my family, I have a cousin who is an entitled parent. Admittedly, I don't see her very often because her parents got divorced when she was a kid and her mom always got her for the holidays, so she didn't really feel connected to our family, which is fine and valid, but she lied to us a lot when she was an adult that she would come and never did, and it kinda hurt everyone inside a bit, especially my grandmother. But every time I do see her now, it's a bit of a nightmare. The last time I saw her was in 2019 at our grandfather's memorial, where she showed up 3 hours late in casual clothes. It was a semi-formal event that were covered in stains and dog fur. And the first thing she did was approach our newly widowed grandmother and ask her for money. So yeah, she's not a great person, but since her mom is raising her kids, they're super sweet. Anyway, during 2021, my paternal grandfather passed, and when he first got sick, he and my grandmother decided to give myself, siblings, and cousins our inheritance because they didn't want it to get lost between fighting if it were to be sorted out after they passed. My aunt, Dad's sis, is also an entitled parent, but this ain't about her for once. We were each given 50,000 Canadian dollars. My brothers and I immediately put the money into tax-free savings account and savings accounts because there's only so much money that you're legally allowed to put in TFSAs. One thing about the money, we told no one. Only our immediate paternal family knew, and we weren't going to tell anyone else because people get weird about money. My maternal side of the family has been fixing up our old family cottage, and one of my brothers is in the trades and doing well for himself, so he decided to buy a used boat off Kijiji with the inheritance money from his savings and then quickly replaced it. Our maternal side was told about and shown the boat, and we just told them he got the money from the trades. Well, my paternal grandmother let it slip about the inheritance to my maternal grandmother, who accidentally mentioned it to one of my poorer uncles. He makes poor financial decisions, and he told the rest of the family. He pouted a bit, but overall, no one asked us for money and understood why we didn't tell them. Since we're not getting together for Christmas this year, we were having a video call to chat and wish happy holidays before we all got busy, and my maternal cousin was there, much to everyone's surprise. Not even 5 minutes into the video call, this conversation happens. Cousin:
All right, boys, what do you want to say to your auntie?
Kids: Thank you for taking us to Disney. Me, who isn't even planning on going anywhere near the US with a 10-foot pole. What are you talking about? Cousin:
You're paying for us to go to Disney.
Me: No, I'm not. Where did you hear that? Kid 1: Mommy said that you'd send us to Disney because Grandma gave you lots of money. My cousin, who had a very smug look on her face and clearly knew what she was doing, and that no one, least of all I, had said anything of the sort.
Yup, and we're so grateful because Grandma didn't give us any money, so thank you.
Me, who's 100% done with this and all the pain she's caused my family. Sorry kids, your mommy is a liar. I'm not sending anyone to Disney. She lied to you. And the money I got was from my other grandma because my grandpa got sick and passed. It's not from this side of the family. I'm sorry that your mommy lied to you. She shouldn't have done that. It was wrong. She owes you an apology. Everyone on the call was just frozen. And then it erupted. Her kids started yelling at her. Why would you lie? And that was so mean. And my personal favorite, are you lying about other stuff? Probably, kiddos, probably. She looked so angry and betrayed on camera, and my relatives started chiming in, but there were too many voices, so I said bye and left the call. My mom called me. I live in a different province for uni, and said what I did was uncalled for, but I pointed out that because of her, there was no way for me to leave that conversation without looking like the bad guy, because I was absolutely not using my money to give her a free vacation, and that she had lied too much to our family and directly caused us a lot of pain, and it was probably for the best that her kids caught on quick. She just said that what I did was uncalled for and hung up. But then I started getting texts from other relatives in the call, and everyone except for the broke uncle who's always complaining about his poor financial decisions was on my side because she had hurt them too. My grandma called to thank me because the only reason my cousin comes around anymore is for money, and it's very hurtful. My cousin was texting mean things at me until I blocked her. Then I started getting messages from her mother because her kids were getting so unruly from this betrayal that she just ditched the kids with her mom until her mom could get them calmed down. Like, how entitled do you have to be? She demands a free trip and then ditches her kids the moment she has to parent. Edit. I want to clarify a few things. 1. This cousin and I are not close. Before this video call, I hadn't seen or spoken to her since 2019 at our grandfather's memorial, and before that in 2011. Going low contact or no contact just aren't necessary because we don't talk in the first place. 2. My mom wasn't mad at me. She thought I could have handled the situation better and perhaps not been so blunt when I knew her kids were there, because I may now have caused lasting damage to their relationship in which she's worried about the kids and not my cousin. But overall, she did think that what I said was funny and that my cousin was an entitled jerk for what she did, and she's pushing for my cousin to be banned from the renovated family cottage. 3. Thanks so much to those who were reassuring me that I'm not the jerk in this situation. But don't worry, I already knew that. She created the situation herself and is responsible for the outcome. To be honest, the main reason I posted here was to rant, and because I thought that people in this sub would appreciate the outcome. 4. My paternal family is not rich. We're a blue-collar family on that side, whereas my maternal family is upper middle class, or middle class because of poor financial decisions. My grandparents got the money because older relatives had passed before him and had no other family except for either my paternal grandmother or paternal grandfather, so their estates went to my paternal grandparents. Now on to an update. It isn't major because it hasn't even been 12 hours since the call, but the broke uncle I mentioned before, who's broke just because of his own poor decision making. He called me privately to try and guilt me into paying for a Disney trip for him and his family. That would be him. His wife, who, although lovely, comes from a very wealthy family from a different country and goes on 6 to 12 vacations or cruises a year. His 2 sons, who are 1,000 times more entitled than he is and are hex spawns, and his stepdaughter. I immediately said no. That's my money. I'm using it for what my grandfather intended me to, university and or traveling. I also pointed out that my uncle works in tech and makes at least $300K a year. His current contract is $380K. He and his wife just went to Dubai, and that I am a full-time university student only doing odd jobs and relying on savings from a previous job. He, by all logic, should be in a much better financial position than me, and if he isn't, that's really not my fault. He pouted, but I told him that if he ever brought it up again, I'd tell the rest of the family he asked. Everyone's mad at him because he never seems to have any money, but he has the highest paying job. So they would absolutely chew him out if they found out he asked me. And my cousin picked up her kids from her mom's house, but her mom found out the reason the kids were so upset, ripped her a new one, and made her call me to apologize. Overall, it's been a pretty successful day. Am I the jerk for borrowing some money from my wife's savings account? My wife and I have joined finances, but she has a savings account her grandpa set up for her before he passed. It's around $40,000 in savings. We both work IT jobs and get paid fairly well. I want to note that we do not live in America, so wages differ. She stated to me that that money is for either an emergency or in case we plan on buying our own house. She said that in case I need money for an emergency, I'm allowed to use it. I also have access to the account, but so far I haven't used any. 2 months ago, my sister asked me to lend her $5,000 because she wanted to pay for her wedding dress, but her card had expired and kept declining. I lent her $5,000, but since I didn't have the full amount of my own paycheck, I borrowed money from my wife's savings. My sister said she'd pay me back once her new card was ready, which would take less than 2 days. I didn't tell my wife this because I'd replaced the money in 2 days. It's been 2 months now, and my sister is putting off on giving me back the money she borrowed. She keeps finding excuses on why she couldn't give it back every time. My wife hasn't checked the savings account in ages, but what if she happens to check, and if she figures out that $5,000 is missing? My best friend says I am honest with her, and I should accept the consequences of my own actions for not notifying my wife and not letting her know about the money missing. Am I the jerk? I feel very guilty for this and for trusting my sister. You're the jerk. Buying a luxurious wedding dress isn't an emergency in the slightest. Your wife trusted you and granted you access to her account, whereas you betrayed her trust unamended. You know that what you did is amiss, and that is why you don't tell her. I don't comprehend why you didn't ask her at first if it's okay to lend your sister the money. If she thinks that's a justified cause, she would consent to this. But I guess she wouldn't lend her the money, and that is why your sister turned to you and you hid it from your wife. You have to tell her ASAP and hope for the best. If she notices it before you tell her, it will escalate the situation. I think she'll discover it either way, even if you transfer the money before she notices, because there's a documentation of transactions in the account. Acknowledge your mistakes and prepare to be denied access to the account. You're the jerk. I'd divorce you over this. A wedding dress is not an emergency. Your sister's card wasn't expired. It declined because she couldn't afford the dress, couldn't afford to pay you back. This isn't a card issue, but a living beyond her means problem. Honestly, you either need to demand the money back from your sister with her selling the dress and then payment plan you the rest, or you tell your wife and see if she wants to take your sister to small claims court for the money. Either way, you messed up big time. This was not an emergency. Your sister had no intention of paying you back and never will. Not the jerk. You have a huge heart and you sound like a great man. Please don't let these people on Reddit get to you. Most of them have no idea what the word kindness actually means. They are trapped in darkness, and I wish mercy upon their souls. Well, what do you think? Is Opie the jerk for stealing $5,000 from his wife's savings account and giving it to his sister, or not? Please let us know. If you did something like this, Reddit boy, you'd need a new head. Am I the jerk for asking my wife to pick me up from the airport? Background. I took a job in Idaho and have been living away from my wife and daughter, who live in Atlanta, since July. My wife is staying in Atlanta for the time being until my daughter's school is over and the apartment lease is up. Now, I'm coming home for Christmas and my flight leaves at 7 a.m. on the 21st. My wife refuses to pick me up from the airport and told me to get an Uber. She says that me asking her to pick me up is selfish on my part, and she was embarrassed to tell her friends that I even asked. She says that, as the man, I have to take care of my family and shouldn't ask her to pick me up, that I have to find my own way home. Further stating that a normal husband would not do this. She goes on to explain that the drive to the airport is too far. My flight arrives too early, she has too many things to do, and can't be expected to wake our 6-year-old daughter up this early just to drive to pick me up from the airport. I should also point out that an Uber, or any rideshare, from the Atlanta airport to my home is going to cost $60 minimum. I've always grown up thinking that you do anything for family, including picking them up from the airport. But she's making it sound like I'm in the wrong for asking. But I don't feel like I'm in the wrong, because this is the kind of thing that you should do for your family. And I can't understand her point of view. Am I the jerk for asking my wife to pick me up from the airport? Edit. More details based on comments. My wife is not working on that particular day, and my daughter is not in school. The airport is 38 miles from my home. Also, this should have been mentioned earlier. She nor I am paying for my ticket. I had to borrow money from my father, so it's my Christmas present now, to afford to go. Why? Because she didn't want us to spend money on the ticket. My job is full-time, her job is part-time. We can afford the ticket, but she told me not to pay for it with our joint bank account. So that is primarily why 7 a.m. is the best flight I could get, particularly in the week of Christmas. Additionally, throughout our marriage, she has told me many times how her friends' husbands are more successful than me and how much money they make. I took this job in Idaho because it paid more than being a substitute teacher, which is what I was doing at the time, and it was a great move for my career. So when she says she's embarrassed to tell her friends that I asked her, it stems from her measuring me to other husbands, who I guess could afford not to rely on family. My job is great, but I still have 2 connecting flights, and it's a red-eye. So not exactly luxury, and not up to her standards. I will also point out that my wife does not like to drive. She turned down a bank job because it was a 20-minute commute from our home, while I was driving 45 minutes to an hour to my job at the time, 7 days a week. Yes, in my industry, 7 days a week is pretty normal. So to clarify based on what I'm reading, she does not want to drive a long distance to pick me up. It's not about her routine or waking our daughter, it's the inconvenience of having to drive that far. And to clarify this, they live in Duluth, Johns Creek, so we're not near the airport by any stretch. And I'm willing to drive the way back. I'm not going to make her drive back and forth. Not the jerk for asking. But listen, your wife is effectively a single parent whilst you work so far away. It's also the holiday season and she has to worry about setting everything up. Shopping, groceries, cooking for Christmas, etc. She might be feeling unsupported and snapped out at you for adding to her plate. When you get home, check in on her and make sure she's coping okay. Everyone sucks here. This is such a minor thing, but it's also probably emblematic of the larger problems in the relationship. I get that you want to have a convenient ride and see your family first thing after working far away and being alone. I also get that your wife doesn't want to at 5 a.m. wake the kid up and drive to get you when she spent months functioning like a single parent and is also tired. Neither of you is acting with much compassion or understanding for the other person here. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
I'm a lot nicer than I used to be. But bruh, your wife sounds like a total…
Should I give my babies normal names? I'm 24, female, and my fiance is 27, male. We're currently expecting twin boys after trying for a year. We've never been more happy. My family are non-religious, and his are practicing Catholics. He is not. I'm 7 months along, and his family are asking what we're thinking of naming them. We've already decided on their names, Phoenix Gray and Griffin Dean. We've never been ones for the run-of-the-mill names. My name is out of the ordinary, and my fiance goes by his middle name, Cassius. The idea of calling our kids, not that these names are wrong or bad, Daniel or Thomas or Samuel, doesn't sit right with us. It isn't us. My in-laws are furious. 1, because they're not traditional names. 2, do not bear any affiliation to family members. My fiance is named after his grandfather. His sister is named after his aunt, etc. And 3, because they're mythical creatures from other cultures. That is apparently what they dislike the most. But we really love the names. We already have a girl's name picked out too, Valkyrie Lee, to pay homage to my Danish grandparents that cared for me when I was a teen. We actually came up with this name before I even got pregnant. We like that all the names match and that they are powerful beings that can fly. We want to make our kids feel powerful too. My father-in-law says to use them as middle names and give them family names as first names, but we are already in love with the full names we've given them. We've even started calling them by them and bought embroidered blankets and clothes. As these are the first babies for both families, my mother-in-law thinks I'm being selfish by not giving them traditional family names and that not doing so will set a bad precedent for the others. Am I being too stubborn? Edit. People are being bullied for all kinds of reasons. Hair, eyes, glasses, braces, style, foot size, ears, biting fingernails, makeup, no makeup. Being called Phoenix or Griffin may not be as common as Sophie or Max, but they're not bully-worthy. Also, I didn't ask if you like the names, just about the concept. Don't judge us by American standards because we're not American. Many people with all 3 of these names have messaged me privately, and I'm sure I'm not the jerk now. Thank you for all of the nice and respectful people. No need to give your opinions now. Everyone sucks here. Please at least give your kids normal middle names that they can switch to if they prefer. Valkyrie has some really negative undertones to me as a European. It does not connote power or strength in any positive way. On the other hand, your in-laws need to stop complaining. It's not their decision and family names are not something that should be forced onto the next generation. Not the jerk. Your kids, your choice. I have an exceptionally unique name, and to be honest, I've hated it all my life. My parents chose it out of love, but it's been a pain to manage. No one can spell it, and I was bullied mercilessly for it. Edit. I'm also incredibly easy to track online because of how unique my name is, which isn't something my parents realized would be an issue as I was born before the internet became so big. So you should definitely choose names you love, with no input from anyone else, but please also consider the impact on your kid down the line. Am I the jerk for laughing after my sister implied my brother's girlfriend's dish wasn't good at Thanksgiving? I, 27 female, and my brother, John, 26 male, are very close, so I was definitely shocked when he surprised us on Thanksgiving by bringing his new girlfriend, Chelsea. He was very happy though, and to be honest, that's the only thing we want for him. So we, grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, held off on all questions until another time. Anyway, dinner time rolls around and we're sharing everything, and my aunt kind of pulls me off to the side and tells me we're not going to be eating my mashed potatoes because Chelsea brought some and John asked that we serve those. I was a little peeved, not gonna lie, because I've done the mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving since I was 16, but I got over it pretty fast. I really didn't care as long as they were good. Spoiler alert, they were not. Everything that could have gone wrong with those potatoes went wrong. They were raisins. She was really excited though, so when she asked everybody if they were good, she got some mm-hms. You know, the kind you do with your mouth closed and an uncomfortable smile on your face. Everything else was good, so her dish was highlighted. We all thought we passed it though, until my nephew spit it out into a tissue. She said something about not pleasing everybody to lighten the mood because we were all looking at him hard as heck, and my brother went, "I'm sure they're glad to have a break from your potatoes anyway." And then they laughed. I wasn't gonna say anything, but my sister, 22, female, said, "We are not," in the most monotone voice, and I just laughed. Man, like one burst of a cackle. Chelsea teared up, and the rest of the night was awkward. My brother called me a jerk and is still mad at me. Am I the jerk? Edit. My sister and I both apologized, although I just said, "I'm really sorry," and my sister did more. Not the jerk. Your brother is the jerk here. He set her up. He should have told the family he was bringing someone to dinner. He knew that you make mashed potatoes every year. He saw those raisins, and then he made that comment about your dish. Your brother set her up. You laughing at your sister's comment is a result of your brother being dumb. If it's the first time you bring a new girlfriend, you don't have her make a dish. If she really needed to cook something, it should have been discussed with the family beforehand, not as a surprise. You're better than me, because I would have refused raisin potatoes and snuck my own potatoes out. Regular from my work thinks I work everywhere apparently. Sorry for how long this is, but I literally still think about this all of the time. Mostly because I still see this woman and she pretends like this never happened. I live in a fairly big city, so it's kind of unfortunate that I keep bumping into this woman who I have to say I'm not too fond of. I work in a gift/curiosity shop. Think candles and tarot cards and fancy overpriced bars of soap. In an older, affluent neighborhood in my city. Customer X comes into the gift shop quite regularly and always has a million questions and is the kind of customer that no matter how busy you are, demands all of the attention be on her. Now, our shop is fairly small, so literally everywhere you turn, there's this woman. Fine, whatever. She's kind of rude, but manageable, and she always spends a decent amount of money. Now, it's important to note that Customer X has a small dog. We'll call this dog Pickles. That is the cutest dog. The second Customer X enters the store, she drops Pickles' leash and goes about her business, leaving Pickles to do whatever Pickles' little heart desires. Sometimes it's just come and sit next to me and get pets. Sometimes it's not. Again, it's not a big store. It doesn't really matter. Pickles can't really get into too much trouble. I like the dog. Flashed forward to our "I don't work here" story. One day I'm shopping at a well-known clothing store, the kind with levels and elevators, a real unit of a clothing store, clear across the city. While I'm looking at some sweaters, I feel a cold little nose press up against my leg, and when I look down, guess who I see? You got it. It was Pickles, tail wagging, leash trailing behind him. Customer X nowhere to be seen. I think to myself, I know this dog. I don't really want to bump into Customer X. I'm certain she will recognize me. We have interacted multiple times at this point, but Pickles is old, and this was a big store. So I scooped the dog up and I set off to find Customer X. After too much searching, it turns out Customer X was on a completely other level than we were, meaning either A, this old Springer Spaniel somehow went up 2 escalators by herself, or B, this woman straight up does not give a hoot and left her dog on a random floor of a clothing store. Who does that? I tried to say a friendly hello to Customer X, something along the lines of, "Hey, I was shopping and I recognized your dog." And before I could even remind her where she knew me from and that it's not weird I brought her dog, Customer X hits me with, "Do you have this shirt in another size? I hate this color. Why don't you have any different styles of this pant?" I was so taken back by what I can only describe as the audacity of this jerk that I could only muster a polite, "I actually don't work here. I work at the other store." To which she responded, "Well, can you go ask somebody for a different size?" I was more than happy to say no. I think my Karen girlfriend is using me for money. Background. I, 23 male, currently financially support my girlfriend, 23 female. I give her some of my 2-week paychecks, usually to either pay her $800 rent for an apartment I had to co-sign for due to her being unemployed. I give her $400 to cover her car note, of which it currently is in need of mechanical checkup, which I told her I will cover the cost of her repairs, seeing as it's her only way to get a job. I ask her every day if she's okay and doing well. I call at least once a day. I'm attentive. She randomly asks for money. I'll send some her way. She asks for a lot from me. I only ask for quality time, cuddling, movie nights, etc. I am aware of the whole conundrum of what this relationship is. Don't focus on why I should leave. I'm well aware. I simply just want a measurement of if I'm the jerk with what comes next. She calls me tonight and asks if I can watch her 3-year-old son at around 10:30 p.m. She's going to go out with her female cousin. I say I'm willing to babysit as long as she comes home by 3 a.m. to spend the night with me because I love her. Give and take. She doesn't agree to a set time, complains that I don't give her enough space, even though I don't live with her, and says she basically wants me to leave when she gets home. That hurt, feeling unwanted, so I said I would pass. She proceeds to block me on everything. So considering how much effort I put into her and how much I care for her, am I the jerk for saying no? I know she's struggling every day with no money. She has a 3-year-old, while I sit at my parents' house chilling. I want her to be happy, but my happiness matters too. I thought I wasn't being selfish by asking her to spend time with me in exchange, and I passed because she wasn't up to doing that. Am I the jerk? Did I deserve to get treated like that after all that I do for her? I get to say no, right? OP, this makes me sad. I can see how much you love her, but I'm sorry to say I don't think she loves you back as much as you do. You are doing a ton for her, financially and emotionally, and she has the guts to ask you to babysit her kid, but ask you to leave when she gets home? She does not love you, and I'm so sorry to say that, but that's not love, and you deserve so much better. You're clearly a good guy. Go find yourself a girl who's fun and nice and treats you how you deserve. Not the jerk, but your girlfriend is a major jerk. There's no excuses for her being a jerk, no matter what situation she's in. And do not feel guilty about leaving her if you decide to do so. It's not your responsibility to care for her if she does not care for you. Everyone sucks here. She is using you. You know she is, but then get mad that she is. You know what this relationship is. Either do every single thing she asks without question or break up with her. I'm sure you can find a more accommodating gold digger with less baggage to help you spend your parents' money. You're the jerk. Judge me all you want, but I'm in the same position she is. I'm 22, have a toddler and a 6-month-old, and I'm unemployed and not looking for a job. Parents cut contact with me and call me lazy, but they don't understand how much I struggle with my mental health. Right now, I have a couple of boyfriends who help me get by. The unemployment I receive is literally next to nothing. I don't let my boyfriends find out about each other because of course they will cut me off. I feel bad for your girlfriend because you're over here complaining and being controlling. You have to spend the night with me because I'm babysitting for you? What kind of crap is that? If you love her half as much as you claim to, then shut up and just support her like a good boyfriend should. You have no idea how hard it is for girls like us just to survive this day and age. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know.
I think jerk would be an understatement for that girl.
Am I the jerk for wanting my wife's son to leave the house after he turns 18? My wife and I have been married for 5 years, and she has a 17-year-old son from a previous relationship. The father left her and her son about a decade ago and has not been present in their lives ever since. I know it was a difficult experience for both of them, and they have a very tight bond as a result. My wife is on permanent disability and doesn't work, so I am the sole breadwinner in the household. I've always tried to be a very present figure in my stepson's life, but I also understand that I am not his father. For the past 3 years or so, her son has been having a lot of behavioral issues. When it started, my wife and I thought it was typical teenager acting out type stuff. But when his behavior continued over the course of months and into a year, we knew we had to take more action. We attended family therapy, got him individual therapy and counseling, worked with the school counselor, tried getting him involved in extracurricular activities, etc. We put a lot of time, effort, and money into as many ideas as we could think of, hoping that something would click. But nothing has worked. His grades in school are near failing, and he is at risk of not graduating next year. He will refuse to leave his room for days at a time. He has zero respect for me as a person, let alone a parent figure. He fights us on attending therapy and counseling sessions and will not participate when we get him there. I am at my wit's end. And I'm also starting to feel the hurt financially because my insurance doesn't cover all of the therapy and counseling. My wife's disability checks take some of the edge off, but I am hemorrhaging money at this point and falling behind on bills. My stepson turns 18 in a couple months, and I'm at a point where I want to stop paying for his therapy and counseling. I'm also at a point where I no longer want him in my house at the end of the next school year. After a recent outburst from him, I broke down to my wife and told her all of this. She was unaware of the financial problems because I didn't want her to feel that her son is a burden on us. But as hard as it is to say it, he kind of is. Out of anger and frustration, I told my wife my feelings about wanting him to leave our house, and she flipped out on me. She accused me of giving up on him and basically being okay with him becoming homeless. She said she would never forgive me if I abandoned him like his father did, and that I was the jerk for even thinking something like that, let alone telling her. It's been a huge rift between us since then, and it's put a huge damper on the holidays. A part of me wants to get this all out in the open since I think my stepson deserves to know what kind of a strain he's putting on all of us, but my wife insists on being protective of him. I feel like no matter what, I'm going to be the bad guy, but I also feel like I have done all that I can do. Am I the jerk for wanting to quit supporting my stepson? Not the jerk. You're doing everything you can to help your stepson. Unfortunately, you cannot help someone who doesn't want to be helped. While he is a minor and you have the authority to do so, have you considered inpatient help? I would suggest being honest with him. His behavior is unacceptable, and he either changes or leaves. You will pay for this therapy as long as he tries to help himself get better. This may cost you your marriage, but if you do not draw this line, you will be having this same conversation in 10 years. Everyone sucks here, but I also think you're mostly not the jerk. Kicking him out, unless to inpatient treatment, isn't going to solve his problems, only yours. It'll basically be the end of the relationship as well. Your wife has blinders on and is equating getting him inpatient help as abandoning him, and that will be their downfall as well because she'll become his enabler. Your wife being the enabler will drag you down as you are the financial backing of this family. From his point of view, I was working out a lot of trauma I didn't understand as a teen, and my stepfather and mother kicked me out and our relationship never recovered. I haven't actually spoken to her since I was in my mid-20s, almost a decade now. She's done to me. It's a really complicated situation you're in. Do you want to sync with your wife and her son? Could you tell her that as long as he isn't trying to get himself help, you're not going to waste the money and time either? Would you be okay closing the book on these relationships and going out on your own and letting them figure it out? Again, all complicated. No one is going to win. Not the jerk. This is why you don't marry single moms. All of my buddies who have had to deal with this kind of crap too. Her kid is never going to love you, and she will never love you anywhere close to the way she loves her spawn. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. He stuck around longer than I would have, I can tell you that much. Should I put my phone down when someone is trying to talk to me? I work 12-hour shifts and get 2 20-minute breaks. Sometimes during a break, I'll sit and chat with friends I work with. But if none of them are on break, then I sit in a secluded area and go on my phone while I eat my lunch. I feel like my break time is the little personal time I get during the day to decompress a bit. We can't leave the plant, but I still feel like I should be able to do what I want with it. If I want to sit and stare at a wall, that's my prerogative. We're also not allowed to have phones on us when we go on the plant floor, so it's the only time I get to make calls or check texts. There's this guy I'll call Tom. I've been assigned the same machine as him a couple times, and working with him is brutal. I'm always more exhausted after a day of working with him than I normally am. He just talks and talks and talks about everything, but nothing really at all, if that makes sense. Yesterday, my weekend on, I was on break. Nobody I talked to was working, so I found a little 2-person table by the wall and ate my sandwich and went on Reddit. Most of the break room was empty. Then Tom came in, sat down across from me, and started babbling about work, production times, and what needed to be done. I was just responding with, and and was still on my phone because I didn't feel like talking to him and I was hoping he'd take a hint. So he brings up football instead, asked if I was checking the score. I said no, that I didn't like football. Why not? I just don't. I never met a guy that didn't like football. Interesting. Then he says, you should really put your phone down when someone's trying to talk to you. It's rude. I said, I only get 40 minutes of break per day. Don't tell me what to do with them. It's bad enough we can't leave the plant, so being on my phone is how I like spending my break. He said, "Well, break time is supposed to be for getting to know your coworkers. You don't have to be a jerk about it. No wonder you sit by yourself." Then he got up and moved. I told my girlfriend after work, and she thinks the guy is probably lonely and looking for a friend, that I could have been nice to him for 20 minutes instead of basically telling him to go away. I feel like just because we work together doesn't make us friends. I'm there to get a paycheck. I don't want to move up or anything. And who wants to talk about work while they're on break? I have a feeling if I did it once, then he'd keep bothering me on every break. Am I the jerk for refusing to put my phone down when someone was trying to talk to me? I'm gonna say not the jerk. He's not entitled to your break time. Yeah, it might be rude of you, but you were just hoping he'd take the hint. When he didn't, you didn't make it about him. Just how you prefer to spend your break. He can be upset all he wants. It's really not that unreasonable or uncommon to have no interest in spending your personal time with the same people you have to spend your work time with. Not the jerk. Break time is not for getting to know your coworkers. It's a break for you to spend it however it suits you. He probably is lonely, but he still needs to accept your boundaries. Tell him you want to use the time to meditate, and his brain will probably explode. If he doesn't know any guys who don't like football, doubt he knows a lot who are into meditation. You're the jerk. You know what the problem is with your generation? You millennials and Gen Zs would rather be messing around on your darn cell phone than getting to know your coworkers. Then you complain about depression and anxiety. Well, gee, maybe it's because all you do is play video games, watch Netflix, and mess around on your phones. Back in my day, we actually socialized. We didn't get participation trophies, and we weren't told we were special just because we exist. No wonder you kids don't have any confidence, and you all expect free handouts. Edit. I'm a retired brigadier general. I worked my butt off for everything I have, but you can call me privileged all you want if it helps you sleep better at night. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for not putting his phone down when the coworker's trying to talk to him or not? Please let us know.
That last comment, though, that's a boomer if I've ever seen one.
Am I the jerk for locking my fridge after my brother let his daughter eat my peppers? I know I sound like I'm making something out of nothing from the title, but let me explain. I love eating bell peppers. I always get a few to snack on while I work. This may sound weird, but they're one of my favorite foods. My brother is staying with me for a few weeks. His wife is away for a work trip, and we live close to each other, so he can come over to my house for a few weeks so I can be there with his daughter while he works. He works nights sometimes, and he doesn't want to leave her alone in case something happens. I keep a lot of my snacks in a mini fridge in a small hallway/closet between my office and an empty bedroom. It keeps them away from where people could find them and closer to my office than the actual fridge down a flight of stairs, so if I'm working, I can easily get to them. The door to the other side is always closed, so I guess it didn't even occur to me that if someone opened the door from the bedroom my brother was staying in, then they would find the mini fridge. Anyway, I had to run out today to do some errands while my brother was with his daughter. He texted me after I had been out for a while and said, "Where did you get these peppers? They're really good. Even Lily likes them." I was upset, I'll admit. I really like those. I just responded, "I just get them from the store. In the future, could you please ask before eating food from my personal fridge? The downstairs one is fine, but the food in the mini fridge is meant for me." He said sure. I was already out, so I bought another pepper and a lock for the fridge. When I got home, I set everything on the counter. My brother asked what the lock was for, and I told him it's for the fridge. He got offended and said I basically was saying I didn't trust him and that he was dishonest. I told him I just wanted to make sure his daughter didn't take anything, especially since now she knows where it is, and I'm fairly certain there's stuff in there she can't eat because of allergies. He still said I was being rude by locking it and implying he was going to steal my food. Now I'm wondering if I was overreacting and if I should have just not gotten it. Am I the jerk? Edit. I guess I should have included her age. My niece is 4, so I'm not positive if she comes across the fridge and is able to get into it, she won't. Yeesh, this was completely valid up to the lock. They made an honest mistake. You set a boundary, they agreed, and you still bought a lock. If you had made the boundary and it happened again, then you have an argument, but this sounds completely harmless. It wasn't an expensive or rare item, it was a pepper. Don't put the lock on, OP. Just keep to the boundary you have set already and go from there. ETA, as comment posted before edits. If niece has allergies, then a child lock for safety would be very reasonable to prevent harm. Locking the fridge to avoid pepper theft after agreed boundaries in place would be jerk behavior. Taking into account potential harm issue, going to go very soft, you're the jerk, as the original post reflected only the pepper theft issue being the reason, and on that instance, I stand by the original comment. Not the jerk. He and his daughter ate your food without your permission. He can't definitely assure you that his daughter won't be interested now and go after food in the mini fridge again. I especially am concerned about the food that she may be allergic to as well. You shouldn't have to move it from where it's easily accessible to you because he messed up. I definitely don't blame the girl. Your brother was being quite rude, and I don't really see this as an overreaction. I understand why he feels like it is, because he doesn't get that it was a violation of your privacy and trust, and you're concerned for his daughter, but he needs to realize that he can't overstep boundaries in your home. You're the jerk. Not buying the allergy defense. That seems thrown in as a way to make yourself look better. If the allergies were the problem, why wasn't that the first thing you said to your brother? OMG, niece got into the mini fridge? Did she eat any of the allergy food? This is about your peppers, which is extremely petty. I don't understand these posts where people have guests over, then get weird about food. It's food. They're not going through your valuables while you sleep. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for putting a lock on her mini fridge or not? Please let us know.
I'd double down and put 2 locks on it.
Am I the jerk for not changing my daughter's birthday to be not vegan? So first, a little background. I found out at a very young age, around 3 months, that my youngest daughter is allergic to dairy and eggs. After a bunch of testing, it was determined that she can't have dairy or eggs in any form, not even cooked or baked. On to the issue. Her first birthday is next weekend. From the get-go, I wanted her birthday to be completely safe for her, as in all food, drink, desserts, etc. will be egg and dairy free. We have spent so much time figuring out what she was allergic to and avoiding it. I wanted to have one day where we do not have to monitor everything she ate. And of course, being a baby, she tends to grab for anything she wants. So having no allergens at all means I don't have to worry if one of our other kids, who are 6 or 3, leave their food in her reach. This is becoming a problem now, because my husband doesn't want to have only vegan food, because he says him and his side of the family won't eat it. I wasn't planning on anything too out there. My mom volunteered to make her homemade veggie soup, and I was going to make a chocolate cake and frosting. The only difference between normal cakes and frosting and the one I'm making is applesauce instead of eggs and oat milk instead of cow's milk. My nephews on my husband's side won't eat the soup at all, I guess, and neither will their parents. The boys, I think, would have liked the cake, but as soon as my in-laws discovered it was vegan, they said they won't eat vegan food, and neither will their kids. My husband wants to just do pizza and normal cake because it's what they like. I don't understand the point of having a birthday meal that the birthday kid can't even eat. I didn't think it was too much to ask to have one day that is catered to my daughter when she's going to have to spend the rest of her life working around everyone else. Am I the jerk? ETA. I have no problem making foods including meat and have already told everyone this. I tend to just default to saying vegan food instead of egg-free and dairy-free just because it's faster, which is my bad. I found a few options of food that do contain meat that are still allergen-free that I hope will make everyone happy. One more edit. I didn't realize that soup would be considered so weird. We live in California, but my family and I were all born and raised in Germany. Where we are from, it's not unusual to have soup for a dinner. Not the jerk. This isn't your family's birthday, it's your daughter's. Their behavior is just another example of me first. It's appalling that they don't put her safety above food preferences. Why can't they eat before the party? My niece has food allergies that require desperate rushes to the ER before they could all be identified. Mushrooms, shellfish, strawberries, eggs, peanuts. Poor dear. She's 8, and all of these products are still not used at all in any family home she goes to the day of arrival. Family get-togethers don't include any of the foods. We love her more than we love any food. Perhaps ask your husband which he could see a future without, a healthy daughter or his favorite foods. Even if her allergies are not yet deadly, it only takes one exposure to change that, and there is no warning as to which exposure it will be. No phones allowed at work. Tell them to call me directly. I work in healthcare, where phones are not to be used while on the floor caring for patients, etc., for privacy and WHS reasons, which is fine and understandable. Most of us have our phones on us or in the break room and don't use them unless on break or away from patient care areas. None of us check our phones while busy, and if they do, we'll always get called out for it by other staff. We were all recently in a meeting where we were told we are no longer allowed to have our phones on us, as it is a distraction and against policy, meaning not to be used unless we are out of the unit or off hospital grounds. A few people piped up and said they had kids in care where their phone was the direct communication for the carers, or there are issues at home that they needed to have their phone to have quick contact if needed, even if it was left in their handbag and could be checked on breaks. Not only that, but we have a half-hour unpaid lunch break where we should be able to use our phones as we see fit. But this was also denied as it's still in a healthcare setting and could cause WHS issues. Now I know working in healthcare and personal mobile phones don't mix, as it really is against policy. However, the issue with denying us complete access was a total overreaction. The issues with requiring quick and direct contact with home or other outside work contacts was brushed off, and we were told if the issue were that bad at home, we shouldn't be at work. Many people were a bit taken aback by this, saying a lot of the home issues are resolved by a quick text back, and not allowing us access to our phones while at work was a bit unreasonable. Our manager said if that is the case, we can give people her direct work number and for contact to go through her, and she will relay the messages to us or give the phone to us to talk to whoever is calling. So, cue malicious compliance. We all gave our at-home, spouses, carers, schools, etc. the direct work line to call for any reason if they're unable to get in contact with us directly, and the phone started ringing continuously. First was a lady whose husband needed approval for a big financial decision at home. The next was a vet calling to tell a coworker their dog needed to be put down. I got a call from my children's daycare saying my son had been bitten, mandatory reporting policy. There were several other phone calls within the span of a few hours with my manager running to find us to relay messages or pull us off the floor so we could speak to the callers, wasting more time than if we were allowed to shoot through a quick text or take a quick phone call while on our breaks. The next day, we were told we could have access to our phones while on break and to please tell our home contacts to stop calling the manager's phone. It took a few days for everyone to get the message, meaning there were still many unnecessary calls coming through, but it made it obvious that the need for communication lines to be open at home was important. Am I the jerk for choosing my pregnant wife over my mom? Some backstory. My mom was a traditional helicopter mom growing up, and even though I'm almost 30, continue to struggle with control issues and not having as much of a say in my life as she used to, and struggles that she is not my go-to person anymore. 6 years ago, me and my wife got together, and once it became serious, I started to put our relationship as a priority. My mom expresses disdain for my wife, and for my attention being on my wife and not on her. She gets upset that I use vacation time to spend with my wife rather than for family vacations, would constantly complain that I don't visit home enough, etc. It has been very difficult on my wife throughout our relationship to feel like my parents don't approve of her or our relationship. When I told my parents I was going to propose, they tried to sabotage it and told me I was too young. When we bought our first house, they told me we were making a mistake. When we made the decision to move to another state, we were met with a lot of guilt for abandoning the family. And in general, we have not gotten a lot of support from my family, specifically my mom, when making big decisions. Me and my wife found out she's pregnant a couple of months ago and decided to wait until she was 12 weeks along to tell friends and family. We told her parents first, and that took a lot out of her. They reacted well, but it was emotionally exhausting, and she had a rough first trimester, so she just didn't have a lot of energy in general. We were obviously planning on telling my family shortly after, and my wife expressed concern about their lack of support for big life decisions and said she didn't know if she had it in her to be a part of telling my parents. She also doesn't like being the center of attention, so being pregnant has been difficult in that sense as well. After talking about it for a bit, I decided to do a family FaceTime call with my parents and siblings to tell them the good news. They reacted fine, but weren't as excited as my wife's parents. My wife was napping when I told them. Now my mom is telling me she's upset that we didn't tell them in person and that my wife wasn't a part of the conversation. I explained that my wife was having a rough time and felt uncomfortable with that, so I was going to do whatever made her the most comfortable. She is my priority. My mom is insisting that her own needs are just as important in this scenario and that I should have been more considerate and should have known it would upset her to hear the news over FaceTime. She also insinuated that my wife steamrolled me in this scenario and that I shouldn't just defer to her when making decisions. I tried to explain that my wife asking this of me was not steamrolling me and that I made the decision to do this based on her comfort. Am I the jerk for putting my wife's concerns and comfort over my mom's feelings? Not the jerk. Your mother doesn't have any needs when it comes to your wife's pregnancy. She has wants, and she needs to grow up and realize it's time for her to be nothing more than a spectator in your life now. That's what parenting is. Eventually, you're just a spectator. Not the jerk. Your mother is a narcissist through and through. I'm sorry you've had to deal with that. I've been there. Your wife and child should be your first priority, as it seems no matter what, she does not support you making your own decisions. I really hope you're able to set boundaries or just completely disengage from her. I wish you, your wife, and your future child all the best. Don't like our slow gas pumps? Take your business someplace else. This happened many years ago at the company I currently work for. At the time, we had about 130 company vehicles at our location and our own fuel pumps. Our location is a few miles outside of town. There was one small privately owned gas station within 100 yards of our company. It received a lot of our business because while we did not get gas there, our employees would stop in the morning, lunch, and after work to pick things up. Their breakfast business was very strong. One of the owners was very rude. She would tell us to hurry up and pick what we wanted, but for the most part, they were okay. There was a change in the law on below-ground fuel pumps, and we found out that we could no longer provide our own fuel to company vehicles. As a result, we made a deal with this small gas station to provide all the fuel for our company. Right away, it was a nightmare. They only had 4 regular pumps and 1 diesel pump. While the regular cars could fuel up at different times, our large trucks would bottle up bad in the morning at the one pump. So we sat down with them and requested they install a fast diesel pump designed for larger trucks. I was actually in on that meeting. The wife just laughed at us. She said there was no way in heck she would pay for that, and if we did not like it, we could just take our business elsewhere. In her mind, we did not have a lot of options, and even if we did, she would still have all our breakfast, lunch, and after-work business. Cue compliance. So we did. We did not want a repeat of what was happening at this location, so we supplied all employees with a COM data card so they could get fuel any place they wanted. This hurt that business more than anyone could have realized. With our employees now stopping at the locations of their choice, they no longer needed to stop to pick up snacks, drinks, or food at this store. Their morning, lunch, and after-work business evaporated. 3 months later, they came to our company to let us know they would now install the new pump. We told them it was too late. I still remember after we said no, the angry matey got mad again and started losing it. 1 month after that, just the husband came by and asked if there was anything he could do to get our business back. We had signed a contract and it was actually saving us money, so we said no. They closed the store about a year after that and tried to sell the location for $1 million. It sat for years until it finally went for about $100,000 to a veterinary clinic. Am I the jerk for not giving a high school ex closure? I dated a guy in high school, almost 25 years ago, for about 6 months. As far as high school relationships go, it was relatively serious, and I can't remember the exact reason I broke up with him. Normal teenager stuff, probably. But it was definitely the right call, as he became vaguely stalkerish afterwards. Calls after being told not to contact me anymore. Gifts dropped off at my doorstep. Threats to my next boyfriend many months later, etc. This behavior went on, intermittently, for longer than our relationship actually lasted, and ended after he graduated the following year. It was creepy and weird and made me feel very unsettled. However, I haven't thought about this guy in years until a mutual friend posted some high school photos on Facebook a few months ago and tagged everyone in them. I was sort of taken aback by the photo, so clearly I still feel unsettled by the situation all these years later. A couple of days ago, my ex reached out on Facebook Messenger with a lengthy message about his life now. Married, has a kid, saying that the Facebook photo highlighted the fact that I still consume a lot of his thoughts. Seeing his name in my inbox made my guts churn, and I'm extra creeped out Because it sounds like he's been obsessing over the end of our relationship since our friend posted that picture months ago. Evidently, his therapist has suggested he attempt to gain some closure by contacting me and asking for an explanation of why I cut him off so completely. I don't think it's my responsibility to explain anything and presumably absolve this guy of his behavior. And I think his therapist is crap for suggesting he gain closure by contacting me, rather than giving him the tools to accept that not every situation gives people the closure they want. I ignored the original message, but received another one today saying that he needs to hear from me so he can get closure and move on. Am I the jerk for ignoring him, or should I be helping this guy with his mental health by giving him the closure he says he needs? I don't think I'm the jerk here, but my husband and best friend think I might be, because what harm comes from giving him closure? ETA. Okay, messages received loud and clear. I'm going to block without engaging at all. I owe him nothing, and while I feel for him if he's actually struggling, I'd prefer to look like the jerk, despite the overwhelming comments that I'm not, rather than give him the thin edge of the wedge to engage further. Thank you for your comments and well wishes. If you don't like it, sue me. Okay. So a bit of background. I was a dumb college kid and in a mixer met the cousin of a classmate. We hit it off, started seeing each other, and when the red flag started going up, was looking for a way out. Except we weren't as careful as we should have been, and she wound up getting pregnant. Was not super excited about the news, but figured I had to take responsibility and at least try to make it work. Stuck with her throughout her pregnancy, was there when my kid was born, would wake up at ungodly hours to feed and change her, but still, the writing was on the wall. Things came to a head, and I finally told her I could not take it anymore. I'd happily take responsibility for my kid, but no way in heck was I spending any more of my time with her. She took it about as well as one could expect, and I didn't see my kid for a few months. All this while I was working 12 to 36-hour shifts. I just gave zero hoots. Got a lawyer involved, got a child support agreement in writing, could see my kid on the one weekend off a month I got. That was that. Years go by, kid grows, I change jobs, but we still adhere to the old agreement. Except that when mom gets mad or is in a bad mood, she won't bring my kid, or starts just spewing crap through messages, and at first I took it, but as the years went on, it started to get really old and really annoying. So my kid is now 5 and lockdown hits, and the mom starts saying how she's not gonna bring my kid because of the risk, and I agree. Except, I eventually found out she's taking her out to parties and playdates and stuff, so it's not so much about her not exposing my kid as it is to me not seeing my kid. I confront her, argument ensues, and she says those magic words.
I'm not taking her,
My kid.
to see you, and if you don't like it, sue me.
Okay then. I get a lawyer who specializes in family matters, and even though in my country it is very difficult to gain custody from the mother, I have a pretty strong case. Mind you, at this point, I didn't want full custody, since her maternal grandparents obviously loved and cared very much for her, and she cared for them, and I had no intention of putting her through that, but it could be used as a leverage point. So we go ahead with the custody battle, and her mom just absolutely loses her crap, telling me, how could I do this? Why am I not thinking about our kid? To which I just reply with a screenshot of her telling me to sue her. So during the time that the custody battle goes on, my kid is remanded to my care, and her mother cannot take her or visit. And let me tell you all, those months were great. Our relationship definitely got stronger. Got to teach her the alphabet. Yes, she did not know it when I saw her. Got to show her my musical tastes, some heavy metal stuck, which is something she would have never been exposed to. It was great. The hearings were dragging on, and even though there were screenshots and proof that showed what a horrible mom she was, my lawyer told me it was not likely to go my way. But we got to leverage that for a better, ironclad agreement, and decided to not prolong it further. Apparently, custody battles can go on for months or upwards of a year. So now, instead of once a month, I see her every other week, plus school vacations, plus holidays. She lives in a different city 3 hours away, so seeing her more often was not feasible. Plus guaranteed video calls, plus being informed of anything that goes on with her, such as doctor, dentist, school. Now my kid and I share stuff with each other that we did not do before, and she's much more excited to spend time with me. As for her mother, she is much more civil now, takes great care of what she does and says, and I doubt will dare me to do anything ever again. Edit, just to give some more info. Her mother would be emotionally manipulative, along the lines of she went 2 days without saying a word to me because of something, even though our apartment was tiny. Nothing along the lines of unfaithfulness or trying to pin a pregnancy on me, though it did cross my mind. I don't really care about blood relations since I am very much my parents' son and cannot stand either of them and am not on speaking terms with either of them. So blood ties don't mean much to me, and that's also why I had no help from them in this situation. And as much as I would have loved to have more custody, my work schedule just did not allow it. I would literally fall asleep with her in my arms after being at work for 36 hours with 2 to 3 hours of sleep max. It was a rough time to be sure, but absolutely no regrets. Reply: a slightly similar situation when I went through a messy divorce through mediation, and it was agreed to a 50-50 split of my daughter. I'm a firm believer a child should have equal access to both parents. Anyways, just before my ex and I were about to sign the dotted line, she was moving out of the family home the coming weekend. My ex decided that as a father, I shouldn't be allowed 50-50. Instead, access should be every other weekend, and I should pay child support. She came up with this plan, having spoken to her half-wit sister, who did the same thing with her husband. He was happy to take the back seat. I'm a very hands-on and involved father, always had been. This conversation happened in the car and is something I will always remember. Conversation went a little like this. X:
I've been thinking about the child arrangements, and I don't think 50-50 is fair.
Me: oh? X:
Yeah, I think it should be more like a 70-30 split. Or better still, 80-20.
Me: really? I'm surprised you would want that, but I'm sure it's for the best. X looked rather happy, surprised but happy. Me: so, how do you want to have your 20%? X:
What? No, I wouldn't have it for 20. You would. You've got this the wrong way around.
Me: no, you have. I've agreed to 50-50 because that's how it should be. If you dare try to mess me about at this stage, then it will not end well for any of us. X:
She's my daughter, and mums have more rights.
Me: then I will do everything I can to get full custody. It will get nasty, you and I will never speak again, and I will use every penny I have, every penny my family has to fight for full custody. I'll use your health, mental health, inability to provide a clean and safe environment, everything and anything I can to get full custody. We will end up hating each other, and it will be her who will suffer as a result. X:
I just don't see why you should be allowed 50-50 when most men don't want it.
Me: ask yourself this. You are leaving the family home. Do I have to allow you to take my daughter? X:
She's my daughter.
Me: she's also mine, but you have no legal right to take her. I can refuse, and then you will have to fight for access. X, after a pause, she said,
Let's stick to 50-50.
In the 6 years since that day, we have kept to more or less 50-50. It tends to work out that my daughter spends more time with me, closer to 60-40, and it works out well for her and I. Fight the good fight, brother. My stalker invited himself to my birthday dinner. I, female 27, met this person, male 32, in 2019 in a bar in our hometown. He's a friend of a close friend and was soon to be joining the armed forces and leaving for basic training. He asked me out and we went out on one date. I wasn't feeling it and gently told him this, as one of his parents had just passed at the time and I was being mindful of his feelings. I've made it pretty clear now on several different occasions via text, Messenger, Snapchat, WhatsApp. He added me on them all, and if he doesn't get an answer on one app, he will try the next until I reply. He's now on home leave for the holidays for the next few weeks, which falls over my birthday. I had planned a night with my close friends, one of which is the mutual friend we have in common. He asked me to go to dinner via Snapchat, and the conversation went like this. Him: do you want to grab dinner when I'm home? Me: I don't think that's a good idea. Thanks for the offer though. Him: just as friends? Me: look, I'm finishing my current job on Thursday next week. I have my birthday dinner on the Friday and start my new job on the Monday, so I don't have much free time, I'm afraid. Him: where are you going? Me: ironically, the bar that we first met in. Him: aw, is mutual friend going? Me: yep, pretty sure he said he's coming. Him: great, I'll see you there. Me: speechless. Him: if that's okay with you. Me: well, the table is booked for 6 people, and there's 6 already going, so there's not any room left for dinner. Him: you'll be done by 2030, so I'll be down then. I pretty much was stumped and completely missed the trap I just walked into. I'm 100% sure he wouldn't see this as a friendly thing and will spend the night trying to flirt with me, which makes me really uncomfortable. I'm not attracted to this person. I hardly know him or speak to him. I never reach out first, but am polite in my replies and rejections. But he's just not gotten the hint and has expressed that I'll change my mind. I know my own mind, and it's made up. He calls me pet names, which from people I don't know, I absolutely abhor. It makes me want to crawl out of my skin and set it on fire. My question is, would I be the jerk if I told him not to come? Or is it too late now, and I'll just have to risk him showing up and making me uncomfortable? This is making me so anxious, it's keeping me up at night. So I'm turning to my favorite subreddit for some help. Am I the jerk? ETA. A few people have suggested that I've been saying soft no's to this dude. On each of the 4 occasions he's asked me to hang out one-on-one, I've said a hard no. Examples: dinners, a drive, hotel, and a trip to the Christmas markets in another town. I've said I'm not interested in dating anyone, which is absolutely true. I'm at a fantastic place in my career, starting my dream job in 9 days, which I didn't think I'd get before I was 30. I have a fabulous family, brilliant friends, and my pup, who's like my doggy daughter. I absolutely have no interest in adding a man to my life. Since this happened, he has found my Tinder profile, which goes unused, sent me a screenshot of my profile picture with a comment of, "Nice profile," which I replied, "Thanks." He then said, "Welcome, sugar." I then called him out and told him it's insulting to call me a pet name and to just stop because he's been told several times not to do it. He was very offended and then asked how I was getting on with Tinder. I just don't want to cause any awkwardness with our mutual friend because he and I are very close. ETA 2. Thank you everyone for your comments, advice, and time. I've sent this dude a cease and desist message and been as blunt as I can possibly be. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to change the venue, as getting a table for a large party this close to Christmas was hard in November. It's impossible now. We live in a relatively small town. The nearest city is about 45 minutes away by public transport, and it's a nightmare to get home after midnight. I've also had a long conversation with our mutual friend, and he understands that I really feel uncomfortable with his advances and knows to reiterate the uninvitation of this dude if he reaches out to him. It might not stop him from appearing, but if he does, the bouncer and bar staff will be my first port of call, so I can leave early if need be. I'll be ticked off, but at least I have a bailout plan. ETA 3. I received a response about 10 minutes ago, which read, "Hey, whatever, I'm seeing someone anyway," and then, "Delete my number." 1. I never saved it in the first place, my dude. 2. If you're seeing someone, why are you asking me to dinner? What the heck? Dude is a field of red flags, and I'm happy it's over with now. Hopefully there won't need to be an update, and I can enjoy my birthday in peace. Thank you to everyone who reached out, commented, and awarded. You're all very kind. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend he acts like a needy 5-year-old? I've been applying for jobs recently. This morning, my boyfriend, Ian, was still sleeping and my phone rang. It was one of the jobs that I applied for, and they asked if I had a minute to talk. I said sure and went in my office and shut the door. I had been in my living room anyways, but noise carries more from the living room and I was trying to be quiet. Well, right after I closed my office door, Ian got up and I heard him walking around. Then he opened the door and came in. He asked, "Who is that?" "Oh, is that your mom? Tell her hi." I was still talking to the HR person, and he said, "Is that Mary? Who is that?" I got up and waved my arm, trying to wave him away, while still trying to answer the HR person's questions, and went back in the living room. He followed me and said, "Is that Kim? Ask if her and Kyle want to go for lunch with us later." So I went in the kitchen instead. He followed me again and started unloading the dishwasher. I started walking back to my office, and the HR lady said she wanted me to come in for an interview Thursday at 1. So I said, "Thursday at 1 works great." While she was explaining how to get there, get in the building and everything, Ian comes running up and says, No, not Thursday. Today. I work Thursday." I thanked her and hung up. I was annoyed. I said, "That was about a job. That wasn't Kim. You're worse than a nosy 5-year-old that needs attention." He said, "Well, you could have just told me who it was." I said, "Yeah, in the middle of a call, I'll say, 'Hold on, my boyfriend wants to know who I'm talking to.'" He said, "Well, you could have wrote it down or something. I was just curious. I get up and you're already on the phone. Sorry, you don't have to be mean about it." He's done this crap before and it's annoying. So I just stayed in my office and I've been checking emails and messing around. I'm just irritated because if that HR person heard him, I would have looked unprofessional and he was disrupting my concentration. I have ADHD and made it harder for me to focus on what she was saying. Maybe I shouldn't have snapped like that and I'm overreacting. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Set boundaries. But my whole question is, why in the world do you put up with that behavior? I would snap if someone was following me around trying to figure out who I'm talking to and it's about work. How does him working affect when you can go for an interview? OP. He thought it was some friends of ours and I was meeting them for lunch. Not sure why he thought that, but... Reply. Are you sure he actually thought that? Some people try to exert control over their partners by sabotaging things like job interviews. OP. I'm trying not to think he'd do that. He's made some comments about, must be nice to get off weekends because he has to work, and he asked why I'm applying for jobs when my job is good enough. But I just sort of figured he wanted me to just be happy where I am, like he is with his job. Reply, red flags. Repair shop won't take credit card. This happened about 20 years ago. I lived about 40 miles away from my office and did the daily commute. Several people at the office did the same thing. I usually worked 7 to 4 just so I could skip the bulk of rush hour traffic. I don't remember exactly how or what happened, but basically after work one day, my minivan decided to quit working. Best I can remember, it was acting weird, some kind of transmission problem, and just quit going. Luckily, this happened between my office and the interstate ramp. Everything else with the van was fine, no engine problems, etc. It was only about 5 years old at that time, and I never had any trouble with it. I deduced it was a transmission problem. Everything runs fine, it just decided to not go anywhere when put in gear. Picked a transmission shop out of the phone book that was not too far away and had it towed up there. Waited around while they took a look at it and said yeah, they could fix it. Don't remember exact quote, but it was probably somewhere around $800 to $1,000 for the job. Okay, I don't have that much cash in the bank, but that's what credit cards are for. They've got the van, I'm stuck. What else am I going to do? They wouldn't take me 40 miles home, but they would give me a ride locally. I had them drop me off at a motel near my office so I could at least walk to work the next day. I got a ride home with a guy from work that day and then carpool a day or so until the van was fixed. Couple days after I drop it off, the shop calls and I go to pick up the van after work. Shop owner gets in the car with me while I give it a test drive. It goes, but yuck, making noise, still not right. So I tell him to try again. This is getting to be a hassle. Another day, another carpool. Next day, get the call. Come pick it up. Okay, drive's fine. No noise. Sounds like you got it fixed. Pull out the credit card, and owner is like, we don't take credit cards. Cash or check only. Well, I don't have my checkbook with me. I don't say I don't have the cash. Ring the office and catch a ride home again with one of the guys working late. Malicious compliance part. I don't have the money to pay the shop, but I do have my latest credit card bill. The one with the little check attached to the bottom of it. I just fill out one of those, take it to the guy the next day, he accepts it, and I get my van back. Here's the fun part. I get a call from the guy later, and he's telling me the bank won't cash the check. They tell him it's from a credit card company, and he can only deposit it. But he doesn't want to do that because he's overdrawn at the bank. Asks me again if I have cash, and I tell him I already gave him a check. He's complaining to me he's overdrawn at the bank, and they'll take that out of his deposit. Not my problem, dude. Sweet revenge for all the hassle. Edit for more info. Back then, my credit card bill would always include 3 checks in the envelope. I think they were actually attached to the bottom of the statement at one time. Had my name and account number printed on them, you could use them just like checks, except the charge went onto the credit card. Am I the jerk for being angry at my son for pawning a family heirloom? My father was a captain for Pan American World Airlines. In the early 60s, he purchased a Rolex GMT Master through a company program. This gives it official Pan Am provenance, which is very important to its value. I'll get to that later. An Air Force reservist, he was called up to serve in Vietnam. Before he was due to ship out, my mother secretly took the watch off his nightstand and had it engraved at a local jeweler. Fly safe, come home, love, her name. He actually thought he had lost the watch until she surprised him with it a few days later. She wanted it to be a good luck charm during his war service. Family lore says that it was, as the one time Dad says he forgot to wear the watch, he had a very close call with a surface-to-air missile. He wore the watch every day thereafter, taking it all over the world until I got engaged. Before my wedding, he took me aside and said that since I was starting a family, I would need all the luck I could get, and gave me the watch. I got married wearing it. You can see it in several of my wedding photos. Before he passed, my father asked me to continue the tradition and give the watch to my son for his 21st birthday. He didn't want me to wait until he got married. Kids take longer to get hitched these days. I want to make it clear how big a responsibility and gift this is. When I went to insure the watch, I had to buy a separate policy to my homeowner's insurance, and it was appraised at $100,000. Anyway, I gave him the watch on his 21st birthday. I told him to be careful where he wore it, but to wear it to job interviews, on dates, etc., as a good luck charm, as his grandpa would have wanted, and to treasure it. I never brought up the value except to tell him that if he needed help covering any insurance premiums, that wouldn't be a problem, and that he should insure it ASAP. A week ago, 6 months after I gave him the watch, I found out he sold it to a pawn shop for $11,000. That's the market value of like a newish GMT Master with no history. He explained to me, only after the fact, that despite the fact that his grandfather's trust and me and his mom paid for his education, he had racked up $8,000 in credit card debt while at school and was going through a Dave Ramsey program to get rid of his debt. He said he didn't feel right owning a luxury item like a Rolex while having that debt, and he felt it was only right to sell it and get out of debt. I told him that while he was still my son, I would never forgive him for selling a part of our family history, and to make matters worse, selling it for a fraction of its value and basically getting ripped off. I told him not to expect any further financial support, which is ironic since if he had just been honest about the debt, I would have happily helped him pay it down. He isn't speaking to me, and my wife has taken his side. We almost never fight, and she called me a jerk since he didn't know better and was just trying to be responsible. Not the jerk. That was priceless, and he threw it away. It's ironic your wife said he was trying to be responsible, as pawning off a precious family heirloom to pay off debt is anything but responsible. The responsible thing to do would have been to be honest with you and even ask for help. That is a huge part of maturing and growing up, knowing when to ask for help, and he proved just how immature and irresponsible he was. You're the jerk. Heirlooms are nice and all, but from a purely pragmatic standpoint, the kid can do whatever he wants with that watch. If he used it to pay off credit card debt, more power to him. He's 21, he made some mistakes, and did what he did to get out of it. If you withheld the fact that it was $100,000, then that was on you. You're the jerk. It's 2021. Who even cares about Rolex watches? Your father wore it back in the day? Big whoop. Your son did the right thing by selling it to someone stupid enough to buy it. Now, if it was something of actual value, like some of my rare mangas, then we would have a problem. But a watch? Seriously? If my parents ever gave me something I could pawn like that, I would do it in a heartbeat. Free money. Well, who do you think is the jerk? Please let us know.
Should have given that watch to Reddit boy and I. We would have taken good care of it.
Am I the jerk for not promoting a longtime employee? Greetings. I've run into a recent dilemma with regards to my business. I, 57, male, own a private equity firm. We're no Warburg, but we're pretty well off. Some background. For the past 20 or so years, I've had a trusted second in command. Let's call him M, who recently retired, which created a vacancy in the company. Technically, the next highest ranking person is a senior executive. Let's call him J, male 51. He's been with the company for around 12 years, and I haven't had any issues with him prior to March of this year. The office had been experiencing financial instability, and Jay had been exploring openings in other companies. I didn't hold it against him, especially since he was so open and honest about the offers he received from other firms, many of which paid better than his current salary. After some negotiations, we were able to decide on a raise for him and get him to stay with the firm. Fast forward to 1 week ago, when M's retirement became official. Since March, circumstance had changed, largely due to the graduation of my son, B, who's 25. He had graduated from a very prestigious university and joined our firm soon after graduation. I had been seriously impressed by his work thus far, and that is where the problem arose. After careful contemplation, I decided to give the vacant position to B. This action was purely for the well-being of the company. Our success over the years has been largely through passing the company down from father to son, which is how I got my start in the firm. It was only right for me to continue this tradition and set up our future for years to come. When I revealed this to the rest of the company in our weekly meeting, the announcement went smoothly. Everyone took the news well and congratulated B. However, I could tell Jay was upset by the news, even though he was trying to hide it. My suspicions were confirmed when, after the meeting, he told me he felt betrayed and shocked by what he called the sudden promotion of B. The promotion was anything but sudden in my eyes, as I felt B had earned it. Though he didn't say it outright, Jay told me that he felt he was owed the promotion, especially after I guaranteed the spot to him in March. While I did mention the possibility of mobility in the company, I feel like this is disingenuous on his part, as he is twisting my words to make it seem like I'm breaking some imaginary promise. I can understand where he's coming from, but this is simply not the way to go about it. He said I was being underhanded by lying to him about his promotion. I have asked for the opinion of the other executives, all of whom agreed with me that I was not being unreasonable. If anything, I'm more confident in my decision after this meeting with Jay. I was already suspicious of his actions in March, but I never brought it up out of respect for his time spent with the firm. But now, I feel as if he violated that respect by trivializing my son's accomplishments and accusing me of being a liar. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. There's no way a 25-year-old has the experience and institutional knowledge of an older person who has been with the firm for years. And of course everyone is congratulating your son. They want to keep their jobs. Same with the executives agreeing with you about Jay. That job should have gone to a senior executive. You're the jerk. If Jay is the third highest ranking employee and you are the first, then how else was he supposed to interpret your suggestion of mobility in the company, other than that he would potentially replace the second ranked employee? It sounds like Jay was honest and upfront with you when he was looking for other jobs, and you said what he wanted to hear to get him to stay, and now you're trying to gaslight him into believing you didn't. Not the jerk. My father pretty much did the same thing when he hired me as COO of his company back in 1995. I was just 26 at the time. Sure, there were others who were better qualified than I was, but my father chose me because he trusted me long term. I recently lost my father, but he never regretted giving me that position. I 10x'd our growth, and we went on to sell the company for $900 million. If he had hired anybody else for that position, I guarantee you they would not have been as dedicated as I was. For over 20 years, every aspect of my life revolved around that company. It cost me my marriage, a drinking problem, and 2 heart attacks. But in the end, it was all worth it to see that smile on Dad's face. I miss my old man. Can't have white rope lights to celebrate Christmas? Okay, get ready for the color explosion. About 20 years ago, my wife and I had just gotten married, and we rented a condo where all the windows and sliding doors faced the parking area. My wife, to celebrate our first Christmas as a married couple, put a white rope light on the railing on our 2-foot grilling area. It was a nice little gesture. That night, we went out to dinner, and when we came home, found a letter under the door. The letter read, "All holiday lights must be removed immediately from the exterior portion of the condo. Christmas or other religious lighting is against HOA policy, and failure to remove can result in fines and other legal actions." My wife felt horrible, and I couldn't believe it. The owner of the condo had left a copy of the HOA regulations, and I found a nice little loophole. Apparently, they could regulate lights on the exterior balcony and grilling area, but not lights inside the condo. Game on. I took my wife immediately to the big box hardware store and picked up 2 fake Christmas trees, about 2,000 colored lights, a light ball, and whatever holiday decorations I could find. Our condo had 3 windows and the sliding glass door. I filled up each one of those windows with lights, crisscrossing around the inside of the perimeter of the window, and one had the lead ball hanging in the center. The sliding door had the Christmas tree in full view, completely covered in lights and ornaments. Also, the sliding doors were full of Christmas lights. My electric bill must have tripled. When you came into the parking lot of the condo complex, you saw a beacon of light, full of Christmas spirit. You probably could see the condo from orbit, and nothing could be said by the HOA snitch. Apparently, at the next board meeting, a proposed rule change was brought up to limit the amount of holiday lighting being shown through windows. It was quietly pointed out by another HOA board member that was an attorney that you probably could not regulate activities inside a person's dwelling. I moved out before next year, but I never received another notice. Reply. Best one I ever had was an HOA notice for a brown spot in my grass during a month of 100-degree weather in the middle of a drought, threatening a hefty fine if it was not corrected. I went around the neighborhood and took Polaroids of all the brown spots in the grass of spaces the HOA was responsible for. Ended up with a few banker's boxes full. At the next HOA meeting, I walked up and dumped them all on the table. and told them the HOA owed the homeowners a few $1,000,000 if fines were applied to them as well. They never bothered me again. Am I the jerk for not participating in Christmas activities with my wife and kids? My wife has always been more into holidays than me because she didn't have much of a family and they were dysfunctional. I grew up in a huge family and have already experienced as many big Christmases as I need. It wasn't a big deal, but since we have kids, ages 2, 5, and 12, she is obsessed with making it special. Over the years, she started a lot of new traditions that include decorating the tree and a bookshelf with the kids. She knows that I don't like to bother with any of that. I mean, I let her do it, but I don't want to be involved since weekends are my only days off and that's just unnecessary work. The thing is, she keeps asking me if I want to help, or go with them to see lights, which takes forever, or do gingerbread houses. I could not have been clearer. So today, when she put up the tree, I just avoided all of that by staying in the bedroom with the door closed. She says that I'm the jerk for refusing to participate and that I'm acting like I have holiday-related trauma, when really it's the weekend, it's my time, and I just want to relax. I don't see what the big deal is. I get that she's trying to give the kids what she didn't have, but it's not my fault that she had a hard childhood. It seems like something she needs to get over instead of trying to play catch-up. Wife wants to make a big deal out of Christmas when I just want a break. Am I the jerk for wanting to scale back?
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.